All right. So this is the 2022 Sizzix Halloween release that I did, and there's a lot of good stuff in here, and I know that you guys have seen it. So I'm just gonna kind of condense the overview, really talk about each design, and then we'll get into the makes. We'll start with some fall designs, get into Halloween, but I think, you know, instead of spending too much time on the design, because hopefully you guys have seen it and know what it's all about, we'll be able to explore it a little bit more in the makes, okay? So let me just set this off and we'll go through each one. So it is important when I'm designing for a season that I anticipate not just Halloween, but also fall, because I know not everyone does Halloween makes. But I think if you like the season or the autumn season, I wanted to have some designs that really play into that. So this is a colorized pumpkin duo. I do a lot of different pumpkins. Sometimes they're jack-o'-lanterns. This one's just a different style of pumpkin. The reason I wanted to do this is because these could also be gourds, right? So if you wanted to do different colors, maybe you wanted to not do them in orange, but maybe yellows or greens or anything like that, you could. They are two separate designs, right? Oh, I lifted the highlight off of this one. But they're two separate shapes. When it comes to colorize, of course, we're building from the bottom up, okay? So if you don't like a lot of the highlights, right, because some people are like, oh, they look a little too drippy, you can eliminate any of these highlight layers and you're still going to get the ultimate shape. So that's a nice thing about colorize. Some tips also, because you're going to see a lot of colorize in this release. For the packaging, I do use different colors of cardstock, right? I work with Ideology cardstock, I work with Sizzix cardstock, I work with a lot of different colors of cardstock. But to be honest, this is the most tedious way to do it if you're cutting each color layer out of cardstock. So if you are new to colorize, or maybe you've done colorize this way and that's the only way, another really quick way to do it is to cut all of your pieces out of white cardstock, be that watercolor cardstock is kind of my favorite for that. And then as you follow the color guide for colorize, you can simply color each of those layers with your ink of choice, right? So for example, if you were doing this in distress, you could do the bottom, say, with crackling campfire, rusty hinge. You could do spice marmalade, carved pumpkin, dried marigold. So you could build up those layers and you're only running everything through one time. You're not worrying about different colors of cardstock. And then your greens, you could do, say, I don't know, crushed olive, peeled paint. So that is another great shortcut. Another thing to remember about colorize, because there, like I said, there's going to be a lot of them. There are great visuals on Sizzix YouTube channel where we kind of do, the team at Sizzix do a great kind of graphic overlay where they show you visually how to build these layers, because there's no how-tos in here, okay? The colorized dies actually show you the color layers, so it'll say like pumpkin 1, orange 1, and it gives you the way to build. But those are very, very cool to actually watch. They're very quick. There's no audio to it. No one's talking you through it. You can just see how everything is assembled, and it's a great visual representation if you're unfamiliar with these dies and like what piece goes where. But each layer has some different crease rule, easy to put together, to be honest. Then this one, I love this one. This is just called Feathery. And the reason I designed Feathery is, if you remember the leaf fragments that we did last year with those great leaves that have the cool cutout pieces, that's what I love about Feathery. I wanted to create another design like that had that similar, I'll say, cutout aesthetic. And so these are just done with distressed watercolor cardstock. You probably have seen a lot of these inky backgrounds that I've done in different demos. A great way to use your inked backgrounds. All of these are watercolor paper, right? But I love this little cutout. And the nice thing about this, and you'll see from the makes, you can easily shape these, you can score them, you can stitch through them, you can use your shaping tool and actually create a dimensional feather that way. So it's just nice. It plays in really well, not only to fall, but I think it would go into spring as well, because you can do all different colors of feathers, and I just like really the wispy design of that. So that's why I did a feather die. Again, plays in well with fall, right? Then we go into a 3D folder for fall. This is just an Acorn 3D, and I say just, but I love this. A shout out to Ryan, who I work with at Sizzix, who does all of the 3D. This was designed from a tile that I found. I found this image of a tile, and I love the texture. And what we wanted to play with on this one, because often in certain backgrounds we go with the smooth design in the background, but I wanted to play with having a little bit of that, almost like a stucco texture in the background, still maintaining that definition and texture in the raised areas. And then I love these acorns because not only do they have that rounded area, but you'll see where the light hits it. You see that little indentation in the middle? I loved that. So I really wanted to capture that as well. Great for inking. Of course, this is just white cardstock. If you're new to 3D, thicker cardstock, in my opinion, is going to give you higher definition, right? There's just more surface to mold. So this is Distress Heavy Stock. This is 130 pound. So that's what really, and you can see it's nice and rigid. A lot of times if you have too thin of a paper and you're trying to get definition, you're not going to get that. You also might get some tearing or ripping in your paper. If that happens and you only have thin paper, my advice is maybe to put 2 sheets in at the same time to emboss it if you're getting a lot of tearing. But thicker paper, you shouldn't have too much trouble, especially if you're misting it with water first. This just shows craft, right? Again, love that texture in craft, but craft is fun because, see, now we can play around with inks as well. So for this one, I did the same craft stock. This is the Distress Heavy Stock Craft, okay? Inked the folder with oxide. I think this is Salvage Patina, where I actually inked the side of the folder, the flat side, right? Sprayed, ran it through. And when I say sprayed, if you spray your paper, of course, your paper is wet. Therefore, when the wet paper comes in contact with the ink, it will oxidize. So I got that great oxidized background. That's my deboss. And I like that little skippity bit, because remember, that was why I wanted a textured area, right? Because that gave me also that little textured bit with the inks. Once this comes out, I took a Distress ink pad, walnut stain, because I wanted that saturation of color, and then just rubbed over it with the ink pad to get that little bit of brown over the top. So simple, so cool, right? That you can just take any of your oxide, ink the folder, and then when it comes out, take a Distress ink to create contrast. And you could do oxide with oxide. This one kind of stepping it up a little bit more, just using Distress embossing glaze, right? If you've seen any of the tutorials, if you're familiar with the whole painting with powder that we've done on Impresslets, same idea. Embossing ink over the top first on the actual folder. So this started out with as watercolor cardstock, little Distress embossing ink, just using the embossing dabber, then pinching and painting with powders, right? So you can see it's okay that it goes outside the lines. It's still going to give you that great color aesthetic. And the reason I like Distress embossing glaze, they are translucent, so it melts like watercolor. Melt that, and then go over it with your inks, your crayons. Here's a little foundry wax. I don't know if you guys can see those little gold specks in there. Just beautiful. So a fun way that you can take a background and obviously cut this up and use it for all sorts of different things for fall. So I really like that. Then we get into Halloween. So of course, bold text. If you've been following the releases so far this year, we did the bold text in, I love what we did in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, where you just have these wonderful typography. A shout out to Kathy Z. She uses these. She rocks these on her cards as well. I just like the bold sentiment. It is designed to create a negative, right? So the phrase, if you will, the words are on the same die, right? You can see kind of that little deboss line. I like that as well. So we wanted to make sure that the dies had a very short outline, because depending on thicker paper, if you have thinner paper, you don't notice this line as much, but I like to work on 130 pound. So when you cut through this, the idea is the negative, right? So you can put papers, inks, glitter, you can make shakers, but you also accumulate a lot of letters that you'll see in the makers will create kind of 2 different cards out of that. But you can also use just the letters for other things. So if you tend to cut a lot of these out, maybe you want to get yourself a little plastic divided box and sort your letters as you cut them out. It may seem tedious at first, but then when you need a certain sentiment, or maybe you want to personalize it with someone's name, you'll have this whole box of alphabets. And I love the fact that they're going to be kind of different font sizes, right? That's going to be the nice thing if you spell out a name. So just an idea. It may not be worth your trouble and you just want to throw away all your letters. That's fine, like alphabet soup. But really fun. Hocus Pocus, I put a spell on you. Happy Halloween. And these all maintain the same width, because I wanted them to not only fit on the front of a card, but also on a number 8 tag, because you know I do love tags, right? Mayor of Tagtown. There's Feeling Wicked, my favorite. I'm here for the candy. I do like the dropouts as well. Trick or Treat, and of course, Boo. So even a single word, you can see, obviously your point size are getting much bigger. That's what's fun about having the alphabets that come out of these bold text dies. It's just a lot of fun. Then a little throwback, right? So as a kid, we talked about all of these little throwbacks to being a kid with candy. This reminds me of just being in school and the bulletin board that was in the classroom of all the great Halloween decorations, the paper ones. I saw this art and I was absolutely captivated by it. And here's why. The simplicity of it blows my mind because really, for the most part, each of these shapes are two pieces. That's it. A solid background and your outline. And it's deceiving because when you look at it, I think a lot of people think that the color is actually the detail, which is not. That's opposite. The color is your background. So each of these shapes comes with a framelit, right? An outline die that is a little bit larger than the detailed design. Okay, so your framelit, your open die is what you color, or you cut your color out of, your background. Okay, you cut that. Then the detail, and you can mix it up. I'm not saying you have to do it this way, but this is how the samples are done. Then the detail die is just cut out of black. Okay, so when I say for the most part it's two pieces, this cat is literally two pieces, meaning all of this black, if you look close, is all connected somewhere. So even though you see like these individual whiskers or the eyes, it's all connected, and you just lay it down. It's two pieces and you're done. The jack-o'-lantern, all connected except for the nose, right? So that's the only piece you're gonna have to pop out and stick that down separate. Owl, all connected. Crazy, right? All of that little detail, you think, oh, these are gonna be a lot of little pieces to stick down. Nope, 1, 2, done. And then of course on the ghost, those little white dots, that's the negative cutout. So you're still gonna have that ghost, and all you have to do is stick those three pieces down because the inside is cut out to reveal the base, just like on the jack-o'-lantern. Those little inside orange, those aren't dots you add to the top. That's showing you your background paper. Done. Witch, right? The witch, all one piece except for those little pupils in her eyes, those black, right? So you can give her an expression as well. If you want her to kind of, look up or to the side, you can position those. Skull, all one piece, right? So when you look at all those lines and everything is connected. So it is very cool to see a die like this that when you look at it in the packaging or maybe you see an image, you think, wow, that is so complicated, but it really isn't. I do put a lot of measurements in here for those that watch the replay or you're watching live that you can come back. So I also do that for the makers because they want to see just kind of a perspective of the size of that. But it's really just a great die set. It's a lot of fun. Then we got this one. This is a little silly, a little fun. This is Mischievous, and I've had a lot of people ask me to do cats for years. And here's the thing, when it comes to doing cats or dogs, and I learned that when I did stamps, when I was doing the crazy birds, crazy cats, crazy dogs. Once you start down this road, there's all these requests of, this type of breed of cat, or it needs to look like this, or this color, it needs to have stripes, it needs to not. And I was like, okay, I'm not going there. But when I found this art, I loved all of the different poses and positions of the cats, because to me that did give a lot of personality to a die set, where I think, if you have a cat, you would be able to kind of identify maybe the personality of your cat with this die set, right? So that's why I just didn't do them all as black cats. I wanted to do all different colors. But I will point out one thing. When I initially designed this, I designed with these like little cutout eyes in the cat. And after I tested my first sample, I didn't like it because to me, it made all the cats look angry. Right? And sometimes, I understand, I'm allergic to cats, but I understand that some cat owners are like, oh yeah, my cat is, usually angry. But sometimes, they're mischievous, they're playful. And I kind of like the idea of not having any face, because then you could imagine the personality. It would let you as the maker, either draw something in or ink them. But I'll tell you this, because I changed this last minute, the art on the packaging never got updated. And I don't know how many of you even look at this tiny little line art. I don't even know how you're going to see it, but you might notice if you look at this art, you're like, oh, there's little eyes on there. Yeah, there was. Not anymore. I didn't like that. So sorry. Look, I can change my mind before it's out, right? I just think it's fun. And you'll see from the makers the personality that this set creates. It's quite hilarious, especially when you see, I see that Angela's like, it reminds me of Lady and the Tramp. You'll see really how these cats work with so many different shapes that maybe you didn't even think about, right? So that is Mischievous, all right? Oh, thanks, Dee. Then we're going to get into colorize. And, I needed to do so much colorize for Halloween because, well, we can play with the colors. And colorize, honestly, we have really simplified this. So a shout out to Lisa at Sizzix. She is the one that I work with specifically on die design, right? Where she will take an idea and she will help me bring it to life in die form, right? Because I don't have that skill. I know what I want, right? And I find the art and I'm like, we need to kind of turn this in. A lot of colorize start out as animations, right? So we're able to really identify certain colors and drop shadows, but she turns it into this. And we've gotten really, really good at colorize. I'll be able to say that through the years. And the reason is because we just start working with base layers. So it is so many less fussy pieces. Like for example, on this cool eyeball, right? This red, kind of this outline, this veining, it's all one piece. I'm just gonna, I don't know if I can lift this up. There you go, I can. You see that? See how they're all connected? But then when we put this top layer on, part of it gets covered up. So it still looks like individual pieces. So as a maker, we really start building with like larger pieces and reveal the detail. So instead of having like all these skinny little pieces, we try, I mean, obviously you need to have some pieces for highlights, but we try to make it an easy build. I love this one. This is called Trick or Treat just because, well, you know, there's no surprise. I love treats. I love caramel apples and or candied apples. It's up to you how you want to make it. I love this skull gingerbread cookie. I've done cookies for Christmas. This was really fun. And I love this. You know, I love candy corn. It's nice to have just a great piece. And you could put it, and you can see it's designed where it can stand vertical, or you can lay it on its side. You can do a lot of different things. And I love this creepy eyeball, right? You see at Halloween, they have the chocolate eyeballs. They're like foil wrapped with the eye on there. So this would be fun to cut this out, maybe put a piece of cellophane, twist it, stick it on a card. Just think it's fun. It's nice to have treats, and it really helps with like treat bags, Halloween invitations, decor, and it's very colorful and fun. That's what I like about working with colorize. But this guy has had like his own fan club, it seems, on social media. I was really surprised when because of course these have already been shipping. These have been shipping worldwide since August 1st. So just less than a week, about 5 days ago. And I love seeing already people getting these dies, making and sharing. So a shout out to all of you for doing so. I really have been trying to share in my stories on Instagram. So if you're not on Instagram, you are missing out, in my opinion, on a lot of inspiration, because that is where I try to share almost daily inspiration that I find on Instagram. And it's always in my story that is there. So thanks for posting and thanks for tagging me, because that's the easiest way for me to see it. But this guy, this is Myron. I wanted to do a toad because I just did. He's hilarious. He does have a toadstool. It is separate, so it's not connected to his body, so you don't always have to use the toadstool. But you'll see that, I mean, it's a pretty nice sized toadstool, so you could even use this die to create with it. But Myron just, he has a great look to him. I love kind of his expression, his kind of little croaky eye. I think it's great. Again, looks like a lot of detail, looks like a million little pieces, but not really. If you take a closer look, we start with our foundational piece, because colorize is always built on a solid. So the entire silhouette of Myron is there. It has crease rules that kind of gives you a little deboss line to know where your next layer goes. So the next shade of green, of course, would go into kind of this lighter green, and all of that green is connected throughout, right? Then you have that lime green. Again, if you look over there, it's all connected throughout. You know, when we get up here, we try to do some smaller pieces to save on space, but you can identify those. Then same thing like with his belly, just able to layer kind of those gray pieces, but you can see all his little warts and things. Those aren't little pieces you have to add. Those are simply cutouts in every layer that reveals your base foundation. That's what makes it cool. Really, really nice. And yeah, I've seen everything from just using him. I saw it's your spirit animal. He's hilarious. I even saw a mistletoe already for Christmas. I thought that was hilarious. Or hocus crocus. I mean, the play on words, just so good for Myron. He's fun. And he's pretty big. I mean, you can see like 4 3/8 by 3. He's a big foundational piece. So not only can you put him on a card, but really, you know, you can still do half of him on a card, right? What's croaking? That would be fun, and you can actually get 2 cards out of him. So you can think about that if you wanted to stick to a specific size or card or tag for that. So that is Myron. Then I would have to say, well, I have a couple favorites for this one, right? So this is Otis. He is one of my favorites. I wanted to do a moon forever, but I wanted it just to have personality because, well, let's face it, on a moon, you know, outside of doing a circle or a sliver, there really wasn't much. And I saw this art and I just loved his expression. So he is this great crescent moon. Again, all of those little dots, those are cutouts. So those aren't tiny little pieces you can build. He is built off this foundational shadow, right? This black, and he does have a tongue. I like that he has a tongue. But if you don't like the tongue, you can eliminate this back piece, and he has this kind of open hook. I believe that Kathy Cowles, who's a maker, she posted something on Instagram yesterday, and I shared it in my story so you could see what Otis looks like without this piece. And he looks perfect. He really is still designed that if you don't want to have that open mouth, you can eliminate that piece. But I wanted to also include like a little string with a star, a little bat, because honestly, even though he's great for Halloween, he's still very charming. If you get rid of the little tongue in the mouth, he would be great for, you know, a kid, a baby card, if you just change the colors, right? Think with me. But I still love this moon because this moon is going to work all the time, right? Halloween, Christmas. If you bought Bold Text 2 in Chapter 2, we have that to the moon and back, right? How great would that be to put that on something for Valentine's Day? So think about that. It's really important to understand on dies that you understand the, you know, the possibility beyond the season, okay? Then we've got this guy. We have Spencer. I've done a lot of skulls. I've done everything from creepy to eerie to incredibly whimsical, right? Like Skelly, but I wanted something on a smaller scale, and this is why I designed Spencer. He's really easy to put together. Again, we utilize a lot of these little dots, these little cutout pieces, okay? Because that's going to provide a lot of detail, but still a very simple build, right? Solid, another color, and the only thing that's separate are this little like outline on the top and that little bit on the teeth, right? So again, with Colorize, you could also stop at any layer that you want, okay? But I think that when you build it, he's a very small little skull, right? Like little 2 by 2.5. But he is scaled that if you got, say, candlelight last year, right? Remember all the candles? I think it was, I think we did it in fall for Christmas or Christmas for fall. It was last year, but it has that great lantern and those drippy candles. He is scaled, you'll see a great make where you can put those drippy candles on his head. And so that's really why I wanted to do Spencer. I love the scale of him. He's really very cool. And wait till you see the makes with him. He's awesome. And last one before we get into the makes. If you are a lover of skulls, well, this is the folder for you. Kind of the folder of my dreams when you talk about detail. And I know that some people get a little creeped out at Halloween. Halloween needs to be a mix of cute and creep, okay? Some people love to get their creep on. Some people love the whimsy of Halloween. I like a little bit of both. And to me, the 3D skulls, absolutely incredible. This is, to me, the most detailed folder that Ryan has ever done, right? It was the most challenging. It took the most versions, but at the end of the day, it is completely worth it. This is just on white cardstock. So the detail you're seeing is just on cardstock, uninked, anything. Both sides also equally cool, especially when you play with light, right? If you remember kind of the Haunted Mansion where, you know, you can shift it and it just looks like it's following you. It's just a very cool detailed design because the 3Ds, right? Because there's a lot of 3D folders. You just need to understand this one is designed really for contour, right? So we've got an actual contoured skull. It's not just a raised piece. There's actually curves and divots and dents and all sorts of great imperfections in here. And those imperfections are really highlighted when you ink the folder, right? So this one, this is just taking that and inking the folder, right? I used archival ink on this one, black archival, inked it, so it will deboss the color, right? So I do love the black. And look at I mean, seriously, look at the detail of that. Wicked cool.
Everyone absolutely loves that.
I love this. And then I kind of learned a trick or a technique, if you will, when I was making the sample. So when you ink your embossing folder with archival, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, you have archival ink on the actual folder itself. Even if you run it through once, you still have some leftovers. And I use archival cleaner to clean it off. I'll talk about this a little bit later more in detail. But I just took archival cleaner, put it right over my folder, and instead of wiping it off, I'm like, I had this piece of paper, let me just throw that in and run it through. And I got a really cool second generation. But this is all that showed up. And I was like, ooh, I love kind of that little schmutz that I got. Okay, hold on. What happens if I run it through once, which is what I did here, and then take archival cleaner, put this inked one back in the folder and run it through a second time? Then that's how I got this one. So I got the black from the first run, the schmutz from the second, and because it had archival cleaner, it kind of lightened some of those areas, and it was just like, come on. And I mean, of course, then I was just like, ooh, now I got to try this color and this color. A lot of fun. I'll talk more in detail. You'll probably see some demos, but you never know what you're going to see or experience till you start playing around. And then, of course, when it comes to folders, I love playing with different cardstocks. This one one of my favorites. This is black alcohol ink cardstock. It is like almost like a suede paper. So I love the finish of it. There's nothing, it's just the paper that is giving this whole effect. Most black cardstocks to me have a sheen to them, even though they're black. And I love this one because of that matte suede finish. That's all that's on there. Okay, so I thought, well, how do I change this one up? So this one is just using white, right? Distress Picket Fence, the ink pad, okay? Because Picket Fence is, and you could use any oxide if you wanted to do the same, but this is embossing it and literally taking an ink pad and rubbing over the top. I might demo this a little bit later just to show you how easy it is, but take a look at that. I'm not really great at dry brushing, right? To me, it's a lot of put on and take off and put on and take off. An ink pad, zippity-doo, smear, and off you go. Right? And that's what I love about Picket Fence, because it gives me kind of that ghosty look, because it's not just a true white pigment ink, so it's not so thick, right? Love that look. And then I started playing around with metallics, right? I love metallics. This is metallic craft stock from Ideology. This is 100 pounds, so this is different than what was in the 8x8 pads. This is the new one. Again, I'll talk about it a little bit later. I won't go into too much detail, but take a look at silver. Silver, if you add some paint, maybe I'll be demoing this one at the end. Take a look at that one. Oh my gosh, with that orange copper color. Oh, purple, right? Yeah, and then this one, oh my gosh, this is wicked cool. Look at that green. Oh my gosh, right? I mean, look at the difference. Like, it's the same paper, that and then painted. So I'll show you the demo. And then just playing around with different colors. So this is the black metallic, the onyx, and then I did white paint. And to me, it has a completely different look, because you kind of get the opposite, the reverse effect. Instead of having white on the top, this puts kind of white in the recess, and but because it's metallic, oh man, so many possibilities. Whoop, whoop. So maybe I'll talk about that a little later. We'll see. I'll put that over here for now. Okay, let's get to it. Let's get to it. Good fun. All right. Yeah, no, that's cool. Thanks, Mario.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right. So let's kick it off. You guys good? Good. So one thing I want to talk about, and we'll get into the metallic paper, because Belinda's like, what? Metallic paper? Yeah, I'll talk about that. We'll do that closer to the demo. But I wanted to point something out before I get into the makes, because I think there was just some things that maybe as makers we don't realize. So all of last year's releases that I did with Sizzix did not come back this year. Okay, nothing came back. So all of the designs last year, the count, when I talk about candlelight, all of those have been retired by Sizzix, gone. But that doesn't mean they're gone in the wild. Meaning, if you see last year's Halloween in a store and you wanted it, no more is coming. Okay, so when they're gone, because I've seen a lot of people use the count from last year. He's not coming back. So if you see him in a store, that's just remaining stock from last year, and you won't see it again. Just like this year, it's really important to understand seasonal is usually with the brands one and done. Some things come back with some brands. We do that with Ideology. But in the case of Sizzix, nothing from last year is making a return. And I've seen on social media, there are stores that have some of last year, which just made me so happy, right? To see stores that had like Candlelight, or that they had, again, the count. So for those that are kind of on the fence, and this, again, not a sales pitch, but I just want to tell you, because I know that if you don't get it from a store and you have to ultimately go on eBay to look for something that's been discontinued, the price is ridiculous.
Outrageous.
It's ridiculous. So I'm just telling you that, just so you kind of get it as you see it, to be like, oh no, I'll wait. Okay.
So it's buy it
All right.
before it's bye-bye.
Mario's got his own punchline. I do like that. All right. So we're going to start with a make that I did because, well, I wanted to, because I love candy. I do love candy. And I think it's really fun to dress up your treats, especially if you have trick-or-treaters, or even if you don't, because we don't have many, but maybe you want to do neighbor gifts, coworkers, friends, just to send them some sweets. It's very simple to do. You can just get cello bags. You can buy cello bags at craft stores. You can also buy them online, just any different size. You can fill it with candy, right? So I love candy corn. This is just my decorative candy, by the way, right? I use it just for decoration every year, except for the stuff in the middle, that's new. But I like these as a kid too. These are those like peanut butter kisses in wax paper. You don't really see them much anymore, but I loved these. I always traded, I always traded for them. But I like seeing that type of design in here, right? Rock candy, swizzle sticks. So the design of candy can also impact how something looks. So even if you're doing treat bags, shake it up, right? Shake it up, mix it up. But this is where, as I mentioned, the whole idea of the retro Halloween it spoke to me, right? Spoke to my heart. Let me bring these in. I'll get this tray out of the way, right? I still love paper straws and plastic spiders because, well, I'm a kid, all right? Let me pull this out and we'll just take a look here. I've got some things just to talk you through it, okay? So when it comes to making things as a maker, it's about using what you have or repurposing other things, right? So if you look at the circles for all of these candy tags, I wanted to make some fun circles. So I just used the die from chapter 3, right? These vintage labels where you can deboss the color, right? If you're familiar with that. And I took the biggest circle to make my Halloween tag. Now, you could go in with patterned paper if you want. You can go in with a lot of things, but I will tell you that if you're going to try to do the inking of this to deboss, okay, it is important to remember that if your pattern in your background is too busy, you won't really see the detail of the debossed ring. Okay, so just remember that if you're playing around before you get all your paper and everything prepped. So here was kind of my workaround, because I tried a lot of things. I tried a lot of different ideology papers, different Halloweens, and everything it looked good, but then when I did kind of the inking, I didn't notice the ring, and I'm like, well, then what's the point? Because ultimately I really wanted to see that. So here was kind of my workaround, and I think as many makers, it's like, oh, duh, I got that. So I just took a piece of cardstock, right? This is watercolor, and I created my own pattern paper, because I'm sure if you go into your stamps, you're going to have some type of background stamp. Maybe it's handwriting. In this case, maybe it's little dots. I love these tiny dots because not only are they ridiculously tiny, but they're kind of worn out in areas. See, that is by design. So when you stamp it, you just get a little bit more kind of distressed. You see where some of the little dots don't appear? That's part of the stamp, because I like that. I like that it was really tiny. So I just stamped this in distress ink. Okay, you could use oxide if you want, and that was my background paper. That was it. You could use archival, you could use anything. I'm not getting these wet, so it didn't matter. But I just went in and made my background paper for all those tags. Just stamping, off you go. And tiny dots, I mean, it's just a good one. It's old, obviously 220, but it's still a really good one. Then I went in with my archival ink, okay, and brayered over the die. If you haven't seen this, watch the chapter 3 recap. I did a demo on that, where you're inking the die with archival, and then when you run it through, you not only cut, but you're going to deboss that color. And I prefer archival because archival seems to adhere best on the die. I have read a lot of things where people say, oh, use embossing ink first, use this first. I don't do that. I just clean it with alcohol each time that I feel that the ink is not transferring, and then I go in and use archival. The thing you need to be careful of if you are one of those embossing ink people, right, is if you have embossing ink on your die, if that's your hack and you're inking it up with a brayer, just make sure that you don't go back into your ink pad, because you have lifted up some of that embossing ink. And if you transfer embossing ink, which is glycerin, to your ink pad, you will contaminate any of your ink pads, right? If you're not going back in, that's not a problem, but just be aware of that. I wanted to talk about brayers, right? Because when I demoed this, I demoed it on some of the smaller labels. So I used kind of a little sports car one because that's the size of the die. For these guys that are big, you can see how this brayer like barely fits the die. I don't like to do that, because if you have to go through too many passes and the edge of your brayer touches your die, you'll see that it starts lifting off your ink, which gets annoying. So that's why I go to, say, the medium size distress sprayer, because I can ink it up with archival, and now if I'm inking the die, I can go in one pass. Okay, so keep that in mind too if you have more than one brayer. If you only have one, well, just make it work. But if you have a bigger brayer for bigger dies, keep that in mind. I like to ink this up, and I like to make a single pass, and if I feel that it needs more, ink it up again before you go back again. Meaning, if you go over it and you go back over it, you're essentially lifting off the ink that you put on because you've taken it off your brayer. So if you're trying to reapply, you need to also reapply ink to your brayer. Just some tips, because I've seen a few people say that they're struggling with getting a better impression. I also like to do 2 passes, right? So when I'm cutting this out, even though it's a framelit, it's pretty easy. 2 passes just ensures a little bit deeper coloring. If the die fits in a sidekick, I've done this with a sidekick, I've done this with the switch, I've done this with the fold away, I've also done this with the vagabond. But 2 passes kind of ensures that little deeper line of ink. And if it mixes, it's okay, right? If it's a little it's a little skippy, that's okay. And archival, a lot of different colors, right? So it doesn't always have to be black. I just happen to like the black against the orange because, well, that speaks Halloween to me, okay? Then what I did, if you look at these, right, you'll notice that it's got that great background and it's got this great little sparkle. Now, for those of you that have been following the brand for years, you might remember this. This was a favorite of Ideology, okay? And these were called deco sheets. And deco sheets were this really thin vinyl that was printed with a sparkly look. This is not textured at all. It's completely smooth. It's not glitter because I don't like how chunky it is, right? Most glitter cardstocks to me are super chunky, but this is completely smooth. Well, guess what? If you haven't seen already, these are coming back. These came back. They're coming back for Halloween, and there's also 2 coming back for Christmas. They're only coming back for a year just because I wanted to bring them back one more time. I normally don't do that, but we were able to actually brighten up the colors and create a multi-pack. So the deco sheets, this is how they come, right? Look at them. So sparkly, no glitter, completely smooth, right? It's printed like that. But the colors, I love this purple one. So like the orange is brighter than the old orange that we did. I love this purple color. I love this black. It's peel and stick, so you can peel it and stick it onto whatever substrate you want to cut. So for example, if you want sparkly chipboard, you simply peel this off because these are adhesive back, stick it onto chipboard, stick it onto whatever weight cardstock. So I stick it onto my cardstock first, and then I die cut it with the framelit. And that's what gave me this wonderful, subtle sparkle. Mess-free, but also to me, it's not so sparkly that it takes away the detail. That is my thing with glitter cardstock, is usually it's pretty chunky. And so when you try to put something detailed, you end up seeing all the specks of glitter. That's just me. So I'm happy that Advantis let me bring these back one more time. We did them in a smaller scale because you have to peel and stick. I didn't want that big sheet that we used to do them in. So it's nice. It's, 4 each of 3 colors, just really simple to go on the front of a piece of cardstock. Then, okay, so I've got my stamp tag. I've got this. You can see that. You can tell the black. I talked to you about that already. That's alcohol ink cardstock black because to me, matte black, it's also much thicker, so it gives me kind of that great definition, almost that it's embossed. Then I cut the same tag out of that alcohol ink black cardstock, and I know for some people it's like, ooh, that's some high-end black cardstock. It is, but if I'm making, right, that'd be like making with less than ingredients, right? If I'm making something for someone, I want to use the best, right? That's what I like. So I love this black cardstock because of the matte. But if you have black cardstock, use what you have for the back, right? No one's going to know, okay? But then this. Let's just talk about this because Mario learned a word the other day. This is vintage festooning. Okay, festooning is, and I believe so, but somebody's probably going to go Google it and correct me. But it was like vintage crepe paper fringe, right? And I had fringe in Ideology again years ago, and it didn't work well, right? Because it was made out of tissue paper, and by the time you tried to wrinkle it up, it just fell apart. It just shredded. This year, man, Tracy Advantis rocked it. So this is fringe from this year, right? This is the new black, and we have a cream coming out for Christmas. It's only seasonal. It is actually layers of crepe paper. So if you remember this from party streamers, right? You know that crepe paper is much thicker and ripply and textured, okay, than tissue paper. It's layers of that. Then it's stitched together. And then what we did different on this year's is when we first did it, these little fringe pieces were much wider. I think they were almost like a 1/4 inch. We reduced it down to like 1/8 of an inch. So it's already cut. So it comes like that, 2 strands and 1.5 yards each-ish, right? Because, you have to stretch it out if you're going to measure it, so don't get all ruler on me. But this is how it comes, and this is what you do to transform it into this. This is how I created this fringe, and I love this because it's just so soft and so vintage and so fabulous. It's so good. Okay, so all you need to do with this stuff is just take it,
Apparently festooning is
roll it there. Yes. Roll it up, right? Smash it up, open it up, and you can see it starts out pretty big. Okay, I'll just show you like the difference in scale. Okay, see how it starts out much wider than this one? So you can stop at any point. You can just do this and be like, okay, this is what I want for my decoration. But if you go in, smash it again in your hand, roll it up again, every single time you kind of smash and roll, it just gets smaller, right? It just gets more fine, more use. And you can see it's very, very durable because it is made out of crepe paper, okay? So once you have this, in order to put it in between the 2 tags, you just take the paper, Let me lay this one down. And then you just smash it, right? With your fingers, your hands, because it's paper, you're able to flatten it. You see that? And that's what's going to allow me to stick half of this, because it's still sewn down the middle. You can't see it because the thread is also black. Half of it is stuck inside, and then this is your fringe that goes around the edge. So to assemble these tags, I just have, I Xyron my stuff, but you could do adhesive sheets. So it's a sticky back of this, a sticky back of the black. I peel it off. I lay this down because it's already flat. I stick it here, and I just roll this in a circle. Press and lift, and if you need to adjust, you can adjust. I prefer this method over glue. Glue is going to be really fussy, right? Because glue, you're dealing with either hot glue, or now you're going to have glue on your fingers, you're going to get glue on the top, and then it's not going to be fringy. So go with some double stick on the back of this, okay? And even if you don't do the whole thing, maybe you have some score tape you go around, but double stick is the easiest, and you just do this. I'm normally working on my media mat. And once you get around, you trim the excess. Even little bits of fringe, save, right? Because these could be the top of little party hats. These could be the little tails of something. So even the scraps stay together because it's sewn down the middle. But how fun is that? Like total vintage happiness for this guy, because I love that, right? And imagine trying to make that. I mean, I know we can as makers, where you're like, hello, Captain Obvious. I'll just go and I'll get my streamers, get out my sewing machine, take my fringe scissors, and I'll be done with this in no time. Absolutely. If you've got those skills, go for it. I made my own fringe once because Paula showed me something on Pinterest. I'm like, that's so cool. I'm going to make my own. And I'm like, denied, right? As the crepe paper gets sucked into my sewing machine. So that was really the inspiration for that. So I just wanted to share, like, it's a fun idea, right? Because you can just take regular candy and just dress it up. But this could even be a card front, right? So if you're not even into treat bags, imagine making these little medallions and just sticking these on a card, right? Take some foam tape. And I did mount these little characters with a couple of foam squares. You can see in there, I love black foam squares. I stacked them too high just to give a little dimension. Pretty easy. There you go. Pretty fun.
Hey, Tim.
Great way to dress up your candy. Hey, Mario.
Don't get all ruler on me.
Oh, is that what I said?
Yes.
Oh, man. Oh, see, I don't know what I say. I say what I say.
You asked me to cut some paper. I don't cut it perfect.
That's it. Don't,
Hey, Tim, don't get all ruler on me.
you know what I mean. Yeah. Because some people are just like, oh, I got this, and it's like 1/8 of an inch. I'm like, I have no idea. Okay.
Don't get all ruler
Let's
on
get
me.
in.
Come
Okay.
on.
Come on. All right. So now that we got like a demo, everybody's kind of warmed up, right? You're fired up. You got those creative juices going. Let's get into the amazing makes. We're going to start out with Zoe Hillman. I wanted to share some fall makes first, so we're going to do fall and jump right into Halloween. But I love seeing how things can go together, okay? It's really, really important to remember that anytime we have new seasonal, go look at what you have, okay? Go look and see what you have in your stash, because you'd be surprised what you can create with. So here, this is, I love the wallpaper in the back, right? The worn wallpaper. This is an etc. tag that Zoe used. And look how she used the acorn background. Beautiful on this. The foundation of this piece, feathery. So see how just taking one feather gives you kind of an anchor point, so you don't have, like, you know, pumpkins in space, right? That they're little asteroids. Very nice that you can sink those down. This is what I was saying about coloring. And if you follow Zoe, you saw that she shared this in her story about using your inks and backgrounds to color your colorized layers. To me, it looks so much better than the packaging, right? That's just regular cardstock. I love the look of this. But then you can see some older dyes in here, right? You've got Thankful. So I do believe, and Zoe, correct me if I'm wrong, this is using 2 different handwritten dyes. Although you seamlessly put them together, I don't believe I did a handwritten Thankful, but I did a Thanks, and I've done, you know, like other fulls. So I think that she brilliantly fused those 2 together. So if you have those, I'll have to wait to see if I was right on that. But putting those together, I mean, how perfect for that handwriting. And these have been retired for a bazillion years, right? But that's the cool thing about saying, I have those. I haven't used those in forever. Look how perfect those work with those pumpkins.
Together. Thanks and beautiful.
There you go. See, I knew, because I was like, I don't have Thankful. I knew right away, but that's brilliant. And then this looks like this guy is from the Vault, right? That Vault series that we did last year, that Raven. He was also part of a earlier Thinlet set. But see, just very cool to take that little mummy cloth tucking out. But what a great make. This could be a card. Remember, when you guys are watching these lives and you're seeing inspiration, take out of the inspiration what inspires you as the maker, right? So if you are solely a card maker and you look at these things, you're like, I don't ever do home decor. There's a card front. If you do scrapbooking, This could be something that could be in the corner of a page, right? If you are into journaling, this could be a journal cover, this could be an accent. You get the idea, is that take the elements for what they are, even if the idea is using a feather as a foundation, inking your layers, looking at your word dies and kind of coming up with words that are relevant to the season, going into your other stash to kind of dress up or accessorize new designs. It's just very cool. And then of course our little file tab, because well, we've got to have that from Specimen. Just love it. Very cool. Very, very cool. And of course, you know, into Thanksgiving and thankful cards, Kubera created this one. I love the color. So let's just talk about all the things that are in here, right? So of course we have the new Colorize Pumpkin Duo, but you could recognize other things, right? Alphanumeric, the toadstool, right? From Myron. Remember when I said that you can just use the toadstool? So there it is for a pop-up color. This was the Colorize Wood Grain. And I like this. I know a lot of people are like, I don't understand why I need a colorized wood grain when there is a 3D folder of lumber. And well, because it's different. It is bolder. It stands out more. So if you are using it as an element, you can see that the definition of this really complements the design of this. It's not to say you couldn't. It's not to say you couldn't use wood grain cardstock or a folder, but that's why I ended up doing a wood grain colorized, because detail-wise, I wanted everything to kind of balance. And then you can go in and use any of your leaves, your funky foliage, anything you have, and just very cool to also layer your stamps and inks on the background, right? Great card, but again, taking those elements from what you have and using them and mixing and matching. That's what this is all about. The old and the new, right? And ink is your friend, because ink provides all your color for Colorize. You don't need to worry about color cardstock. How about a little bit of crackle in the corner? You guys see that? Little rock candy crackle. Okay. I also love it when makers make a series of things. And Anita, she rocked this. So this is an entire series of cards, right? And she left me a note. She's like, okay, these are all using the same product, but a different substrate. So remember that. Same product, different substrate. So the product is alcohol inks, right? So she used alcohol ink for this. So here you can see the background, right, with the acorns, and you can see the pumpkins, a lot of detail coloring, right, because that would all have to be hand colored. But she really wanted to share the difference. So I'll place all these out first, and then I'll talk about, I think I remember them. I hope Anita's watching, because she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I tried to do my homework, right? So you can see they all have different looks. So this first one, working on Yupo, that's going to be white, synthetic, most vibrant shine to the color, right? Beautiful. This is on black, right? Which was kind of surprising that the colors. So to me, I think there's got to be maybe a little snow cap in there, right? Just to kind of make these colors pop, because alcohol inks are translucent. And Anita's really good about sharing a lot of this on her blog and blog posts, but very cool to see the difference in working on different substrates, right? Just kind of tones it down, gives it a little deeper, darker look. Then this is using the brushed metallic alcohol ink, right? That brushed silver. So look at that. That's where you really see that this looks like kind of tooled metal, right? Like look at the difference in shine.
You said yes, snow cap first.
See, perfect. I know my stuff, but I always like to guess, right? So you can see the difference between Yupo, right? This is this one, and the metallic. It just has a whole different level of bling to it, right? Nice shine. But it's great to also just be reminded that, hey, this is what I have. This is what I'll use. They all work, but just they give you a different result. And of course, this one. This is the Silver Sparkle alcohol ink cardstock. Okay, so this is a sparkly cardstock designed for alcohol ink. Many people have tried to use alcohol ink on, say, glitter paper, and the ink will go onto the glitter paper, but it just won't move onto the surface because it wants to soak through the surface. And that's what's nice about the Silver Sparkle. It has that little bit of sparkle in there, if you can see, but it is designed for alcohol ink, so it allows you to blend and create those beautiful looks. But amazing, right? That you can just sit down with your alcohol inks, change up your papers, and just have a play. Really, really cool. Yeah, I mean, you have a different favorite, and it completely changes, I think, the overall look. Again, if you're not a card maker, this could be something that you put in a frame and you gift to someone, right? Because, well, art is art. Whether it's folded or framed, art is art, you guys. All right, and take a look at this beauty. Paula created this one. Love the colors of this one. Another etc. tag. Okay. Look at the background of this. So stunning. Look at those colors. Look at that. Love the blend of this. I'm going to guess these are, I'm going to say they're distress crayons in the mica ones, the seasonal ones. I could be wrong. I don't know. Because it's so luminous. So beautiful, the color of this that are on there. But to me, it looks like those seasonal crayons because they have that beautiful luster to them, right? Oh, Paula just said this will be on her blog today. Beautiful, beautiful make on that. And I love Grateful, and I like that little inclusion of the ideology sticker. See where it says heart? I don't know if the light is hitting it. So it's just Grateful Heart. And there again, feathery. Nice little foundational pieces. A great thing to underline, frame, kind of put this down. Very cool.
Distress
Yes.
Halloween crayons.
Whoop, whoop. There you go. See, look at those. I just like those. For those that really haven't played around with those, they are seasonal, right? So the seasonal crayons are, besides that they're a different color, they actually have that mica in them. They're pearlized. The other crayons are not. And they're amazing. Very, very cool. And we'll get more into that next week, but so beautiful. Love that. I just love these little pieces that kind of get tucked in here and there, right? Especially with those feathers. Told you they're going to be good. You're going to find a need for those feathers because, well, feathery. So Zoe with a Y, Zoe in Italy, created this tag. So here you can see the background, Acorn. You don't always have to ink a background. The background really is kind of the star of the show, so it could just be a texture, okay? But then you can create all these elements, whether you're going to use ephemera, paper, a little bit of mummy cloth. But here's what I was saying, how you can stack up those feathers and just stitch through them, right? Kind of ruffle the edges a little bit so you can see how it has dimension. That's what's really nice about this design, is that it does allow you just to, I don't know, layer them and create a completely different look with feathers where they don't just have to appear flat, okay? Which is, I think that's the important thing to remember about a shape. Sharon created this card. Again, beautiful colors, right? Look at those wonderful mica stains, that little shimmer in there, right? That's for the distress mica stain. Beautiful on a card. Simple cut, layer that. You can see here, that's a stamp from Noteworthy. The stamp set I did with Stampers Anonymous in this year, in June. Use a lot of those things. So maybe you're going to create something that's not for fall, not for Halloween, but it's that time of year, so you want that color palette, but you're going to send this to a friend, right? Very important to always remember. Sometimes I say this as a maker because sometimes people shut down seasonal because they're like, I don't do that season. I'm like, you are missing out on the products that can be used throughout the year in such amazing ways. So I love this. I love the colors of this, Sharon. It's very cool to see what people do with the feathers, right? It's really cool. Do you mind bringing those back? Thanks. Sure. So this one, Debbie created. I love this. Debbie Evan created this card with the feathers and Halloween. And here's what I find super interesting about cards like this, right? If you look at the background, those are the positive letters of trick or treat. But even though it's covered, like I read it, and I don't know if everybody sees like that. It's fun to me when I see pieces like that where it's like, these are completely covered, but I already read trick or treat on there. Probably the color of the candy corn feathers, right, that make me see that. But isn't that just a funny thing? Because as a maker, I often wouldn't think of that, right? I would want like prime real estate to fit the entire text. But when you see how certain designers can layer stuff, I'm like, that's just brilliant. I don't know why it fools my eye, or maybe because I know it says trick or treat. I don't know. But the candy corn feathers, come on. That is amazing. So fun just to see feathers just done a completely different way. Tifa. I love, every time she does something, she just does her own thing with it. And that's what is always inspiring. So whether it's an envelope or a card, there's so much detail going on, right? You've got these wonderful feathers. And if you take a look at the feathers, they are stamped with the bubbles, right? Again, that bubble stamp makes for great texture on things. Love the color, right? Those rainbow feathers. There you can see the witch for retro Halloween, but really beautiful how these pop over that black background. Just super cool. And then you can see the mica sprays in the back just on the black cardstock and how wonderful these are. But that pop of color, again, against the black, that's brilliant. But the bubbles, see, again, another idea for feathers. So when you're looking at all this stuff, right, whether you've got, that bubble background, whether you have that foundational piece right there, whether you're working on giving a completely different vibe, right? Whole different color palette using the dyes. You can just see just kind of the introduction of feathers. I just love how they can all kind of play together in totally different ways. right? Just a feather. That to me is what is very cool to kind of remember about dies. It's like, okay, when would I use them? How would I use them? And what different design could I get using them?
Come
right?
on,
It's a great representation right there. Very cool. All right. And then we just jump right into Halloween. Because, well, it is all about tricks and treats. So we're going to go into retro. So I love this. So I talked about treat bags. I mean, Debbie Adams, like, she puts me to shame because she can just up her game. She's like, treat bags, stand back and watch. I love seeing just the fun that could happen with cards and treats for Halloween, especially even if it's not trick-or-treaters, if it's just for gifts. You can make a bag, take a bag. If you have a die cut for a bag or a box, you can use that, right? So you can just create a box and cut off one end and turn it into a bag. But I love just seeing that retro Halloween. So that is glittery paper, right? And I love that. That's actually a really nice size glitter. I love that sparkle, right? Gives it a lot more shimmer than deco. Little candy. And so there's one of the old school. Remember this die? Paper rosette. People want that back so bad. But it's not coming back. But it's a beautiful, beautiful die. It was in a decorative strip. It was in a thinlit. I loved the ease of that. How fun just to like put in a balloon for color, right? For just a great like party treat bag. Candy, little paper straws, and then again, bringing in some older dies, right? So this die, this was Haunted, right? This is a thinlit. And then we had that little spider web from Frightful Things. So diving into what you had before and creating just such a fun treat bag, just mixing and matching all of those components. Debbie also did this card. What I really liked is how she switched up the black. Remember I talked about alcohol ink black, but look at these. So this is a black glossy, right, on the owl. This is just a flocked cardstock, so it's got that little black fuzz on there. Isn't that great? And then just a matte black cardstock, right? And so this one has glitter underneath. This just has like a few little accents, right, of actually cutting the layered piece, right? Because initially when I saw this, I'm like, oh, she probably went in with like stickles, right, some glitter glue, and I'm like, but man, she got to have a steady hand. And then I thought, wait a minute, nah, she just cut the detailed layer also out of glitter, as well as black, and just offset it a little bit. So you added that glitter layer that looks like you went in and did that. What a great hack, right? A brilliant, brilliant background to still take this layer and just offset it. This way you're going to get that little bit of sparkle detail without having to go in and do it by hand. Just offset those two layers. Very cool. And the outside, this is Ideology Mummy Cloth, right? Mummy cloth is kind of that strip of gauze that allows you just to peel it apart. It's really nice as a great unraveled frame. You can see all the cool pattern papers in the background, that little trick that's die cut under there. I just love the detail, little stitching elements, and then there's even some pieces in here. So there's the little eek die, right? Fun, but cool ideas. Again, when you're watching these lives, take those ideas, write that down. If you don't have a pad of paper, maybe you're going to do that on the replay, but it's like, right, switch top layers, right? Glossy, flocked paper, matte, it's going to change the look. Offset with a glitter paper, brilliant idea, right? Those are things that are really important to remember, those takeaways from watching the lives. Unbelievable. I agree. I love the layers. I love all this, right? I just want to throw it around. It's like finding confetti all the time. All right. Let's bring in, it's so fun to see really how makers use this set. So Vicky created this. I love just the whole fun play of this, right? This is also the skull from Retro Halloween. Kind of a Day of the Dead vibe with the little alcohol ink on the top. These little black, this is Ideology bouquet flowers, right? Now she has those little black flowers. Love the repetition in there. But see, just adding those alcohol inks where it pops those colors and create that fun slimline card. So this could be a slimline. These could be individual cards. Yeah, this is kind of how I would want to make a card systematically, right? Create a really long card and then just go in and chop them up. This way I feel like, wow, look what I accomplished. I just made 5 cards. But brilliant idea, right? Using the alcohol ink for those colors, especially leaving that bottom part just white and exposed because it really creates that, just draws your eye into that, doesn't it? Very, very cool. I know, Thelma rides again. It's amazing to see really what people do and how they just kind of embrace their style. Zoe with a Y created this. This is just a tag book, just a fun way to create. If you don't know what to do with tags, a great thing to do is take any of your washi tape or design tape. You can hinge it together, right? Create an accordion, however you want to work with it. But This is all just using inks, using Crip paste, right? You can stitch things together to add a little bit more interest on there. You can add the bold text. There you can see those big numbers making an appearance, right? Those are the element stencils. But I like how these characters look with that inked background, right? Just that blend. It's so cool to see. So this would be like when I mentioned the reverse, where the background in this case is black and the top layer is color. So you can mix and match. You can do however you want. Little few clippings in there. Just great make. Just a fun way again to use these pieces. Joy created this card. Love the boo. Here's some great ideas for this. First of all, you guys ready? Action wobbler. See?
Wobbler.
I actually Googled it just to know, because normally I just call it like a little thinger. But yeah, really fun to put that in there. But here's what's great about this. The background, use those letters. Remember when I was talking about using those letters that you would take out from a previous card? Okay? If they're already spelling it out, you don't have to put it in your, your little alphabet box that I mentioned, but you can save those letters, glue them down to your cardstock, especially if you're cutting out of white, and then just using, these are the distress mica stains, spray your entire background, and now this just looks like it's embossed, right? But it's using up your paper scraps. Again, another idea, and then you just have that word where you're just going to leave that white so it pops out. But not fun? Really cool to see just how fun the effect is. This one, if you look, I'll just show you what Joy did. It's really clever. So the framelit layer, ready? That's gray. Then she did this again in white. Then she cut this again in black. So the black outline would normally go on the gray base. But then by cutting it again in white, she pressed this in, did a little inlay with her die cut. So see, that black and that white layer is flush and sticks this on. What a great idea, right? To actually take another color and inlay it into all those open spaces. See? Very cool. I love seeing the ideas of using those elements and creating the inlay pieces too.
Wobbler.
Well, I know. It's like, I had to Google it. I'm like, okay, what is it? What is it? What is it? All right. Take a look at these treats. Whoop, whoop. Can't wait. Anita created this whole, she's like, oh, I made a few samples. But again, I like the idea that it is an idea and it's really about repetition, right?
She also said all the candy is real.
Ooh, even better. Thanks, Anita. So this is using a giant tag, right? So you just take a big tag. You can buy these large tags. I don't know if this is like a 10 or a 12 craft tag. Check this out. For, again, ideology people, you remember this. Remember when we did Halloween craft stock where we printed? That's old school. I love it. But here you can see just these great big tags where we're using the bold text where she's got that glitter popping through. I love the metallic of how she did. Love where she also cut that little party hat for the cat. I also love this pumpkin, right? And then, of course, the treat bag. So taking that big tag, filling a paper bag with treats, and then tying that on with some mummy cloth. But look at all those, right? Little glitter, little metallic. And I like these little collars she did with the mummy cloth as well. Isn't that fun? Notice that on all these. I just checked it out in the skull. I love that. That little fun collar. Great. So fun, right? Taking an idea and just going. All right. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So many ideas, right? So many ideas, especially for treats. That's really also just up in the treat game big time. Okay. We're going to get into cards. Take a look at these. There's going to be so much inspiration. I just figured I'd pile it up. It's going to make it easier, right? So these cards, this is a whole little series of cards that Jen created. I love how Jen just uses ink so much in her makes, especially from backgrounds on. You can see that little shimmer, right? There's that mica stain in action. Look at those beautiful backgrounds. I love how mica stain catches the light. That's why, it only comes out once a year. And this year you notice that the colors are different from last year. Talk more about that next week. But I love these backgrounds and the shine. Again, repetition of an idea. So here, the backgrounds, right? I love that background has a little bit of color. Kind of looks like maybe it's resist spray in the background to create that little orange peel shine. Might be embossing powder. And then you've got that glitter layer, right? That black sparkly layer. And then we've got some mummy cloth, right? Just tied on there. But take a look at the stamps used. So the background, right? So this is Tiny Text Halloween. This is like an old school stamp, I think, let's see, what was it? Like, I don't know, it was like in the 400s. But this one, taking that whole stamp, like when I talked about etc., stamping the whole background. So all those little words, right? That became the background. And then even these bolder words, these sentiments, that's also, I think that's from Mr. Bones, right? Those big words that we did. And then ideology clippings. So it's again taking something new, let's just say it's a die cut, and using it with things that you have, right? Using a stamp set that you had a couple years ago, or using an embellishment, or using a sticker, or using whatever that is. So Tiny Text Halloween and Mr. Bones, that. So great, great cards. Cool, cool ideas of just using Tiny Text Halloween, those big sentiments. But again, those could be stickers or whatever. Yep, Mr. Bones. He was fun because I do remember just having those big words because I wanted those. I like them. All right. Then this next one, again, repetition of an idea. Love a good shakety shake. So I love when I see shaker cards. You hear that every time I do a live. I'm fascinated by just how shaker cards work. So Juliana did these cards. If you look at the background, beautiful cardstock, and just kind of that smearing of color, whether you're using sprays, ink pads, anything to create that smear of color. But I love all that white space. I love the splatters. The detail of this, the spider webs, right? This is from Life of the Party. So this is an old school stamp set where she stamped those great spider webs because I love the drip. That's what I've been using on my graphics this year as well. One of my favorite spider webs ever because it's got these little drippy things. But what I wanted to point out on the shaker cards is how great this set is for shakers, right? Because you can take the framelit that you would normally build on, okay, use that as your window. So it's going to cut slightly larger than the detail. That's what you use for your acetate window. And then the detailed piece you actually put inside with the shakety bits, right? So the shaky stuff can go, over the face, right? So that's a great way that you can take this set and layer it. So fun because that framelit just gives you just that perfect amount of real estate to create that window. And then I love how she used that negative space and just like acetate the whole thing. So the whole entire card front is a shakety shake fest. So much fun, right? Great ideas. Again, just using that and saying, oh, okay, instead of stacking these up, here's another idea of how to use that framelit. It's perfect. Then we've got just this bright, colorful fun. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you who made this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Sharon created this. I just here, let me just move some of this out a little bit. There we go. Sorry. I love this panel. So this is an ideology vignette display panel. There again, making for the season, right? If you're not going to do cards, you're not going to do bags, you're not going to do treats, you can take something and make it for home deck, right? Home decor and create your own thing. Here you can see colorized trick or treat, right? Those little candy elements and pops of color. Look how fun those candy corn are, even with that little pink on the edge, right? You've got the retro Halloween in there. You've got those eyes, a little bit of glossy accents on there, and you've got bold text. So taking dies from several different sets from the release and mixing those together. Ones that you might look at the packaging and go, they don't really go together. Right, but when you go in and give it your own look, your own palette, they certainly do. You can mix and match and create it. And I love the idea of just creating these blocks. Because while this is a great panel, this could still be a card front, right? And I like the kind of the distinction of the color panels. So you can look at this and get so many ideas, not only for layering things, but how you can mix and match and change up the palette to give it a completely different vibe, right? So, I mean, unbelievable. From bright to retro vintage, to shakety shake, to layers, to a whole alcohol ink Day of the Dead, to these wonderful big party tags, to a tag book like, retro Halloween, like, it's amazing. It is. It always amazes me that the makers just say, yeah, we got this. It's absolutely amazing, really. And I love that just the variety of ideas that come our way. So grateful for that. Okay. Perfect. Moving on. You guys doing all right? I know. I agree. I've been watching your comments, and it's so good. They're just beautiful to see all of these makes. And again, if you didn't catch the maker when I talk about it on timholtz.com, all of the makes will be there, and all of the makers will be identified in each photo. So it's a great way that you can go back and see that. But this is what I love about all of the different releases. So take a look at this card. I love this. Stacy created this card. So this card is using the trick or treat, right? So these were the cookies, but she didn't put it on like the cookie layer, just kind of using those skulls and stacking those up. I love the little flowers that she added, right? This, again, an old school die. This one, I think this one's just called spider web. It's just a thinlet. You can see back here, it's just one big web, but she also used it on the edges there. There you get a better look of that. Again, it's a reason to have dies because you build your collection through the years. Then you've got those hearts, right? Taking those, and then just I will never leave you. So a whole different nod to the season, or something that you could use. I mean, because this to me also has a wonderful gothic look that could be a Valentine card, believe it or not. I love it. It's so good. And then you see that whole contrast of white sewing around it. It just draws your eye, boom, right into that, right? So using the backgrounds, again, you can see just a wonderful colors of distress. I love those little hearts with the stitches. Just, it's a great way to use that die that when, you know, on the package, it's all candies and treats, but it has a whole different story. All right. Now this, I mean, you know, I told you, I'm a 5-year-old, but take a look at that. I mean, you know, I know that for those that do card mechanics, you're probably rolling your eyes going, this was circa, I don't know, 1980. Who knows when it was? I still probably don't know how it works, and that's okay. I don't need to. I know it's magical. That's what I'm going to say. But Joy created this card. I love that wood grain cardstock with the mica stain. So remember, with the distressed mica stain, you don't have to always soak a background. If you're putting it on black, you're going to get that wonderful luminous splatter. But I love what she did with the eyeball from this set and how it just does that rolling. Can you see? I probably couldn't stop this. Like the rolling eyeball is like the action wobbler to me. Like I could just sit here and, yeah, this is what I would do all day. Yeah, I can't help it. I love it. And I'm sure Joy's like, oh boy, she would know me. I am, told you. I'm 10 5-year-olds held together by candy. Okay. I do. I love that. Because see, sometimes you think and you're like, oh, I need to put like 30 things on. No way. You just need to just tell a story and just have a good time with a rolling eyeball. All right. Barbara created this card. Look at those colors. Look at that yummy apple, right? Totally Disney apple. Love the colors, right? That green and purple. Trick or treat. Again, the incorporating an older die of a little spider. I like. And believe me, and Paula's going to be like, really? I love the wonkiness, right? Because I don't mind little wonky letters because they're still in a straight line. I do. I love that. I love the background, right? The inks, a little bit of stenciling, a little bit of crackle. It's a fun card. Great palette too, Barbara. And you can see here how she used the Ideology confections. And because these are made out of clay, you can slice them in half. They're soft enough to slice in half. So what a great card embellishment to take those confections, cut it in half, and use those on a card, right? So think candy corn, because we did candy corn this year in Ideology. Imagine slicing those up, right? And using those as embellishments. Or if you're really good with like a little clay blade, who knows? Maybe those could be shakety bits. I don't know. But speaking of candy corn, Paula rocks my world with this. Look, this is, of course, this is like the bucket of my dreams, right? A bucket of candy corn. And look at that sparkly goodness, right? So that's rock candy on there. So if you look at that sparkle, that's what I love about distressed rock candy glitter. It does add that like sugary finish to things. So even if you're inking, or even if you do regular color cardstock, put down either collage medium or glossy accents and then add some rock candy, and it just makes everything sugary. So I do love that. This is potted. If you guys remember that die, that potted die, and using the Industrious from chapter 3 just to kind of give it a little bit more of a steampunk vibe on an etc. tag. There's that spider web again, right? Used in the background. I like how that one has, you can build it. It's just one web, but it does allow you to kind of connect it and create a background. And then we've got, it's the little things that make life big. You know it, right? That's right there. I love it. And that's my medicine. Candy is my medicine. That is, apothecary. That candy is my medicine. Just, it's fun to see, again, how to incorporate dyes in just fun ways, right? Because really, these pieces, they're big enough scale. And that's why I wanted to do these bigger pieces. Because if you wanted to create just a fun garland, or you wanted to tie something around an element for Halloween, like a treat bag, I just really wanted some big candy pieces. I've done candy in the past, but it was like, it's time to get my trick and treat on. So really good, really good. Let's just one more time, shall we? Okay. There you go. You got it. So fun. Could see what people are going to be doing with that. All right.
Take your medicine.
I've been chewing the whole time, but I will sit here just in case I need it. Thanks, Mario. Okay. Bring on the cats, right? Bring on the mischievous cats. Take a look at this card series. So Kath created all of these cards. And this is what I was saying to you about when you're working with dyes and you're doing inks and you're doing backgrounds, you can get so much out of what you do if you just sit there and compartmentalize your making. Meaning, sit down one day and just do inky backgrounds. Have a stack of paper, get your sprays, your ink pads, whatever it is, and just ink and play around with different colors, ink, 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 do them all, and you have them at the ready, right? Then sit down and just die cut stuff, right? Die cut stuff out of different kind of cardstocks that Kath used. So die cut your cats out of black. I'll talk about the white. You can cut them out of different colors, cut any accessory pieces, cut your card panels, cut your card, have all those things done, and then you can just sit down and assemble, right? Assemble meaning if you look at her cards, right? She created that little duo. So she created the backgrounds, right? So I'll talk about these. So here you can see, and I love it when makers do this. We talked about Debbie doing that with the glitter. But here, to make that cat look outlined, instead of going in with a white pen, which you can just cut it again out of white and then offset another layer. So just because a die is designed one way doesn't mean that you can't outline it with another color just by offsetting a top layer. Doesn't mean you have to do it every time, right? But offsetting it's really good. Here you can see those little stars on the string. That's from Otis, right? So if you want to have all those little hanging stars because, you know, cats like to smack things around, there you have those little hanging stars from Otis to incorporate it. But it's really the poses, to me, that bring Mischievous to life, okay? That's what it is. So when she cut out Toil and Trouble, those letters become the letters on this card, right? Raised up. And here you can see that the cat could sleep on top of something. I love the little bow from here, right? That little bow from the string from Otis goes right around that little kitty neck. Cute, right? Little stamping, again, little splatter of mica. And you'll see that from all the cards, right? So here, this is just a branch die cut out of white, so it could look like lightning, so a storm, right? Think outside the box. There you see spiderweb again, right? So a lot of backgrounds, your twigs, if you cut them in the right color, they look great like lightning, but you can see how mischievous, like, look at how she's got these cats, like, just popping up out of the letters, right? Because the cats not only have the body, but they each have an individual head that matches. So it's a little small for a little wobbly bit, but you can make a little wiry spring or just use foam. But I wanted to do those separate heads because I think it adds more dimension. So that's why every cat has the full entire cat body, cat head thing, and then every cat has a matching head for things like this. So they can pop up out of things and create that mischievous look. Adding the tail, isn't that fun? This one just kind of pouncing, just go right around like the top of a fence. Just very cool to see the positive, negative, right? You've got Eek, again, that playful cat. So you can see the repetition in idea and design. So that means you can yield so much out of your creative time, right? And just using your dies in different ways, old and new. Just fantastic, right? So good. And I love when you cut out of a background because then you just get the most incredible letters, right? That's what it's all about. Just really, really cool to see all of these ideas incorporating the cards. Just rock and roll, Kath. So good. Just say, Kath is like just a making machine. She makes so much. Yeah, she does. I love this envelope that Natifa did. So fun with the texture, right? But here's so many great ideas. So you can see in the background, there's the stencils, an old school Halloween stencil. You also see the star. It's so fun where makers, you know, they kind of, it's very cool when makers use the same thing from a completely different set in a different way. So I love that little star from Otis. But take a look at the little pennants. This is from Bunny Games, right? So for those of you that got Bunny Games in spring, great to dress up for a Halloween party. I love the little masks, little Ideology Masquerade stickers, but there's also a Masquerade die as well. I love the Toil and Trouble. Love the texture of this envelope too. You can see all that wonderful crypt paste on there. And you can see that it's just like a shattered window because she just used mica and kind of tore it across. So it's like just Toil and Trouble. Their names, right? Such a fun make for the mischievous cats. Love it. So good. Then Jen created these cards. So again, using an idea, creating something totally different. So this is crypt paste just through a stencil to create kind of a brick wall, or it can be a fence. Taking the moon, so you can do the moon mask, right? Remember the moon mask we did last year? Or you can just use a circle if you don't have that. Create that moon background and then add the cats. You can take the bat, whether it's from Otis or maybe you have the bats from the Count or maybe even an older set. But this is using up letters, right? Using letters from glitter paper or however you cut it out, but it just gives a whole nother storyline to these cats. And see what I mean about the poses? You'll see them. You're going to see these mischievous cats popping up in different makes throughout the live. It's wonderful how everyone made them. It really is. I think I can kind of keep these in. I think I can kind of build off of this. Kind of like leaving them in the shot. Makes it really fun. Then Tammy B created this one. Take a look at these cats and the pumpkin duo, right? So the color eyes. It was important when I was designing this that I wanted to think about scale, okay? It doesn't necessarily mean that I always try to do matchy-matchy, but if it happens to be part of the same release and I can pay attention to that, I tried to do that. So when it came to creating pumpkins again, because I wanted to add a different style of pumpkins, these mischievous cats, I wanted them to also work with a lot of the different dies from this release. It doesn't mean that it only works with this. You could see they work with other dies from other releases, but very cool that you can have them sitting in front of the pumpkin or laying on top of that pumpkin, right? Or prancing around on top of the word. I just love how Tammy created this card. Again, the stitching, right? We can see those little leaves. I think this was from an old thinlit die that had like an ivy to it. And that's really great for the pumpkin patch. I love those leaves, Tammy. You can see in the back, that's that woven 3D folder. So see that texture where it makes it look like kind of burlap under there, but that's just using a 3D folder. But that's what's fun about the mischievous cats. They could be in with elements. They could be prancing around words. So even outside of Halloween, if you have a friend that is a cat lover, you can put those on your bold text that say, you know, happy birthday or thanks or any of those, because that's really why I designed this set the way I did. I knew that I probably couldn't make every cat lover happy. I might not make any, but I did cats, and to me, I did them in a way that has a lot more versatility throughout the year and not just for Halloween, but certainly a great playful appearance, right?
Yeah,
love it. They're fun.
The cats are
I just love how they're like just sticking his neck out everywhere and little tail. They're just fun. They're mischievous. They are indeed. So you'll see them popping up in some other things. All right.
Kitty.
There you go.
Okay.
So next we'll talk about Myron, because, well, you just can't help but love him. I love him. He just has that look. He's a lovable toad. I love him. So Jan created this. This is using one of the etc. tombstones, right? I love that little remnant rub. See you later. So fun. See you later. Take a look at this whole in memory of. And you've got Myron sitting there, right? Dearly departed. You can cut as many of those toadstools out. I love also that little bit of texture, right? So that's just using the dotted stencil, just kind of go in and add that little bit of texture on there. But look at the color and look at just the design of him. Because to me, he's a statement piece in and of itself. And you're going to see how many different ways and different colors he was used. I think that's what's just most fascinating. But you just can't deny that smirk. And you've seen, if you haven't seen on social media, really check it out. People are putting, hats from like winter wardrobe on him, right? Because you can put a top hat on him. You're going to even see in here some crowns, right? Obviously the prints, but just the attention to detail that Jan does with the crit paste, right? That little bit of texture, a little ideology on there. I love that. And then all that little moss that's just around. Yeah, in memory of. So good, right? I agree. Yeah, I love his smirk too. I think it's just that little eye right there that just kind of wrinkled up there. There you go. I'll put it over here. Another etc. tag. This is just a complete, and I wanted to show this. Yuko created this one. I love it because, I don't know, my imagination, I always just picture a story around the make. So Yuko created Myron, a completely different aesthetic. She likes to work with distress paint on craft. So it gives the paper a very cool model look. She shared this technique on her blog several times, just using paints, but you can also do oxide. But, color-wise, you see what I was saying? Like, same shape, but he really has a different personality depending on how you work with him, right? Whether you're working with cardstocks or inks. But this is also an old school thinlit set. I believe this has long been retired. But this is Laboratory. It was all these little bottles. And to me, I just love the idea of, this kind of mad scientist, and he's got the bottle and it just dripped and spilled and turned him into a toad. I think that's I don't know if that's her story, but that's my story. And I like that. And incorporating, again, stamps or any kind of background, but just another cool look for Myron, right? A completely different storyline for him. It's funny. Then we've got, well, you know, you got to have a couple of princes. I think that's what it is. And I was hoping that Makers would do this. So Kathy created this card, right, where we've got Myron, right? Everyone was thinking it. I just said it. Maybe he said something that turned him into a toad, right? But how she just, this is just a cutout crown, right? She just cut that out. I think it's really fun to add those bats around it as well. And you can make it more whimsical just by adding different things, right? So whether you're going to do a big chat sticker from Ideology, whether you found a stamp sentiment, because to me, although yes, Myron is launched for Halloween, I think he's going to be wonderful at Valentine's Day, right? I see him dressed up. I see a bow tie on him, top hat, right? You know, Kiss Me. I just think it's good. It's really good. Oh, speaking of Kiss Me, there you go. Look at that next card. I didn't even try to do that. Nico created that, right? With Kiss Me. See, that's just what I was thinking. Again, you can cut a crown out of anything, or if you have a die that does that. I love seeing down here. These are, if you look at this background, right? These are the funky wreaths. This is an old school one. You take a look at the bottom of this. You guys recognize this lily pad? Anyone? Anyone? I'll tell you. This is from Paper Cut Chicks, right? So the one we just did for this year, for Easter, remember those little chicks kind of stand on that grass? Look at that perfect lily pad for Myron, right? Really, really clever to use that on the background. I'd like to say I designed it that way. I didn't. I just noticed that background because I'm like, oh, I really like that, because that could be a lily pad, or that could be blue where he's like standing in like a ripply pond. But very, very cool to see. Again, you'll see a little bit of that mica stain in the background. Just fun. See, it's all about the storyline. That's what I was saying. Just changing up the storyline. So Kath created this. Again, play on words. Totally here for the candy. That is me. Again, Myron. And look at just the vibrant colors. That's the beauty of playing with your inks, you guys. But I love just the whimsy that Kath did with the flowers. And you can see there the confections, right? The Ideology. So if you've been looking at stuff, or maybe you have stuff in your stash from last year and you're like, I've not used those candies. What a fun center of a flower, right? That they add, because it has that little stripe, and you could either use them like that for dimension, or like I said, slice them in half if you have a little clay knife. I love the sparkly mushrooms, really gives it a touch of whimsy. And it's just a panel. So this could be a panel that you can add ribbon to, you can hang, you can put it in a frame, but again, changes the storyline, right? From going on a tombstone to being, you know, a mad scientist in a laboratory, or maybe he said something was turned into a toad, or Kiss Me, or we've just got, you know, that frog that absolutely loves candy. So fun to see Myron. And then I didn't even have to look to see who this was. I knew it the moment I saw it, when I saw this play on color. Take a look at this. Keisha created this, and I love it, because this is what I've been saying, that it doesn't have to be Halloween, right? So this, you can never have too much hoppy. How brilliant is that? Because this font that you see in bold text, there's also an alphanumeric of that. So there's just an alphabet of that font style that you can cut out your own words. But take a look at the background. You see that the wildflowers, right? We have that wildflower thinlet that cuts those out. Just cut him out in green, and it just kind of looks, he's in a little swamp. I love the toadstool, but his color, those blues, come on. That is so fun, so springy, so perfect, so thinking way outside the box. And that is what I love about the power of a maker, right? Where the maker's like, I'm just going to do me, and I'm just going to embrace that idea. And that to me is the brilliance of that, because you can see from a single shape how it can be transformed based on the imagination and thinking well beyond the season, right? And it's amazing. This is what I was saying also at the beginning. I'm so grateful, because you would think that all of these are so strategically planned, like you make this and you make this and you make this. Nope, they just make. But because the makers that we have, they all have a very distinctive style, and they stay in that style, and that's what we can always count on to just make us just like totally happy and totally happy. Oh my gosh, look at that. See, amazing. Myron for the win, right? He's so good, so good. Oh, see, JT, yeah, told you. Oh my gosh, this play on words, so good. All right, we're gonna keep going with Color Eyes, and we're gonna go in to Otis because, like I said, I just love him. He's so fun. Nico created this card. Otis, I just love him. Again, I love the tongue. I don't know why people it just added that little spot of color, but again, you don't have to use it. But the great thing about this card and what I wanted to remind you of when it comes to dies like this is a quote chip, shine like the stars, right? He can be used for birthday, congratulations, anything throughout the year. I know that, sometimes when we're in a certain season or theme, that's all we see. But it's when you start looking at these pieces that you realize like, okay, I can take dies from other sets and make clouds. I can, give it a whole different storyline by just changing up what I put with it. So I do love this card. And again, you can see those mica stains. That's what makes Otis just shine. If you haven't played with mica stains, guys, like it's providing color and shine. It's almost like he's illuminated, right? Really fun. This is from Jan. Look at just this whole playful scene, right? So it starts out on an etc. tag. That's going to be the foundation here, okay? Then taking those etc. trims, almost kind of building her own little vignette box on a tag, which I thought was very clever, using those same etc. trims because it's made out of that material and building up a little box. But here we can see Otis in the background, again, that little shine, and look at that little mini paper doll, right? With their bat wings there, sitting there, like kind of holding on to that star. See that little storyline? So she's kind of off in the distance, that whole forced perspective. Then we have another paper doll with the transparent bat wings, and then the pumpkins. So it's almost like, I don't know, these great little Halloween spooky fairies in the garden. She's back there, watching what he's doing on the moon, and he's in the pumpkin patch doing mischief. I don't know. I told you, I like to create my own stories for these. They're fun, but it's just the attention to detail, right? Taking little pumpkins, doing little die cut leaves, a little bit of moss, and setting the stage. And the colors, again, you're seeing that shine because of the mica stain, right? Seeing that the purples and blacks and orange. So shout out to Ranger, because Ranger did send all of the Halloween out to makers. Gosh, I want to say it was like May or June, right? So they were hand filling stuff that early because I wanted them to incorporate it, and they really did. They just did such a great job of seeing it throughout their makes, right? Quite fun to see a whole different story with Otis. So Yuko created this vignette. So again, we're talking about color, right? And Yuko's technique of using paints, because paint not only provides more of a muted tone, but a completely different texture, if you will, right? Very shabby chic, very worn. And that's really kind of what this box is. You can see that she used the Sizzix, all of those great doilies and vintage lace trims just to create that tattered top of the box. The papers in the background you can see are just torn and ripped, but I love this whole story where she used Happy Halloween, but it's almost like a marquee where they're just standing up. So it casts that great drop shadow. See that great drop shadow on the back? So if you have this lit up, but there are the pumpkins, again with paint, so it gives a really cool shabby tone. All of those stars that Otis has. So even though he's got that single star, you've already seen where Kath used them and how she tied those around. So this to me would be great for Christmas, right? Where you just wanted to have different stars at different heights for Christmas, or even if you're just going to use this string with the bow and you're going to put different shapes on the end of it, right? There's that too. So really cool how Otis is just in the back of this Halloween box. I think I'll put that up here, right? It's good. Kind of try to keep the real estate. Okay. So Emma created this. Thought it was a really cool way of using an etc. tag, but upside down, right? So just using pieces. So sometimes when you're making, you might have elements or leftover pieces. So like you might have the foundation of a tombstone or one of the etc. trims. I think these came back this year as well, those spider webs. I love this etc. trim because you can see it's made out of that thick board. It's really thick. But you can see that taking this, it just gave it its own new piece. It's almost like a tombstone, but it's got that squared top because it's just an upside down etc. tag, right? Clever idea. Remember that. So here you can see the incorporation of stamps. There's Otis on there, little shine. I love the little spider hanging from the top. Eek. Look at these gates. Remember these, right? Another great Sizzix set from years past, but these gates create a great perspective to kind of the pumpkin patch, how they're open, and we've got the pumpkins in there. Pumpkin duo, but I love that there's 4 of them, and then just the bats. But again, another great story, and just the attention to detail on the layers, right? Layering with cardstock, stitching around the edges, adding a little bit of design tape to the edge, and of course some hardware heads. It's almost like find the hardware heads, right? So good to see that. But different storyline, right? You guys are getting that. That's what I love. Very, very cool. I like layering this. It's almost like I'm looking at the shot, almost kind of creating, but then I don't leave myself in a room. I'll bring them back in frame in a minute. Otherwise, I won't have any room for the other makes. So take a look at this. So it sits like this, just so you guys can see what it is. Kathy created this. It's this wonderful stacked box with Otis and the cats. But of course, there's also finials, there's these paper box, but of course, it's got two sets of tiny lights, okay? So we can light up Otis, right? So you can see he's got those green lights. I love tiny lights. Tiny lights. You knew they were going to make an appearance, right? And then we've got the orange tiny lights in the back. So how great is this going to be at night, where it just lights up that orange color, and then you've got the green lighting up Otis here. But you can see the mischievous cat. See how this one is like climbing up to get to the top. This one is coming out of the back. You can see those stars where she added wires to them. I mean, how fun and playful and whimsical is this make, right? So good. And you could alcohol ink that, right? Cutting this out of paper and putting transparency behind it just allows you to wrap a box. So whether you're creating a box, right, or you're utilizing paper tubes or paper mache, all those scraps can be transformed into something just magical. And I love the finial, right, with these little stacked pieces just to bring those cats up to height. And tiny lights or not, you know me, tiny lights are kind of a way to my heart, especially during the season. I love just how things light up. But very cool to see how these play and the storyline around the makers, right? Very cool, Kathy. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love all these. Okay, another story, right? Tammy B. So let me light this guy up. Look at that. Look at Otis glow, right? So this is a whole heap of tiny lights just coiled up behind here. But this is a vignette box. So this is the new square vignette box. But before I get into the detail inside, let's appreciate the detail outside, because this is something that I think as makers sometimes we often forget, right? Use those dies as your texture, right? So here's all the cats glued onto the outside of this ideology vignette box, right? All the letters, right, from bold, you've got eek kind of stuck around there, then painted over, and then just, I love how she added just that paste in there. That little bit of crypt paste just gives it just such a great texture and vibe to it. But you can see that wherever you look at this make, you're going to see something amazing, okay? Then we've got Otis, but you can see that he is kind of in the background, and all the cats, the mischievous cats, are sitting on the rooftop, right? They're sitting on the roof of the house. So she created those shingles from the Village collection, right? So the Village that had those little shingle pieces that we did last year. Yeah, you don't have to build a house. You can just take those components and create this great rooftop, right? Using wood grain cardstock, and how she'd added that little bit of paste to the edge to kind of make it look a little mossy. But this is what I was saying. You see how those mischievous cats can like curl and wrap around Otis. See, no tongue, right? You don't have to use that. But they can also be standing up, and that's really why I love to have that little extra head. To me, it just gives a whole nother bit of dimension. You can see the little splatter of the mica stain, and then you've got that other cat kind of climbing down inside. Of course, the bats. But yeah, to me, tiny lights, it does. It's still great without it, right? But you really creates a beautiful nightlight scene, and then she added just even the little foundation feet so it can stand up. So great, right? So when I do too, it's just fun. It adds such a glow, and they also really catches on that mica stain also, right? Really adds that glow. Just beautiful. Great make, Tammy B. Man, the cats. I knew she was going to do something great with the cats. That's what it's all about. That rooftop, just so cool. All right. Then we have another Otis, our last. Welcome to Otisville, right? Welcome to Otisville. So cool. Zoe created this, Zoe Hillman. Take a look at Otisville. I'm going to light him up. Come on. Wait, let me do that again.
Look at those lights.
Look at that. Okay. So, vignette. We'll go around. We'll kind of talk about this whole thing because there was a lot of older dies. This one like took me a minute to kind of take inventory of as well from another story. I'm like, okay, Otis, fabulous with distress, right? Look at all the detail and colors of Otis, how Zoe used all her inks, did a little nice grungy one. But then you see the background. The background where those lights are coming through, that was a die cut. Again, a retired die, but this is swirling stars. Right, so this was a die that's already in this design that you cut it out of a panel and it die cuts out the negative swirling stars. look how great it is to scale with Otis, right? Kind of goes right around him. It's just very, very magical. And then another old school one. This is Cityscape, right? I had a whole series of Cityscape. The display at the trade show when we launched this was amazing, because there was, I think, the Metropolis, there's Skyline, and then there was, I think, Suburban, where it had all the different buildings. But this, Zoe used the Skyline, where it's offset. So it really, again, does that whole forced perspective of Otis, the moon over the city. That's Otisville. And then she even incorporated to the moon and back. So this is what I was saying, that die in chapter 2, but just using the letters, that's what she used on the outside of the box. A whole nother story. So Otis, like a great make that you could personalize it, right? If this was, I mean, really, I'll even go so far to say if this was an anniversary gift, you put the significant date on there, because it's the whole thing to the moon and back, right? Or it could be to infinity and beyond. It could be really however your imagination goes, but it's just showing tiny lights used in a different way. And I've seen some questions about tiny lights. So tiny lights are part of the ideology line every day, okay? Those would be the clear ones or the white ones, right? You can also alcohol ink tiny lights, but you have to do them individually in order for them to maintain their color. But during the season, we actually launch color lights. So for example, for Halloween, we do tiny lights in a set of green and purple. But it just depends on where you use them. If you put them behind something, right, like Kathy, she alcohol inked this panel, right? You can put the clear tiny lights to get that effect if you alcohol ink what they're going to shine through, okay? But the nice thing about tiny lights is you can actually contour them and form them to where you want. They are very, very flat, replaceable batteries. It comes with batteries if you buy them in the US. If you buy them international, because they're lithium batteries, they come without. But it has an on and off switch, which is really nice, so you can turn it on and off. But if you cluster them together, then you get a really, really bright glow. And depending on what you put behind it, right? So it depends. So in this case, it's got that yellow bit of mica stain. That's going to help that glow as well. They're just really just so much fun, and adds like a whole different level of interest to the make. But I just wanted to share, honestly, I'm going to try to bring all these in. Probably not a good idea. But all the great ways of using Otis. Really fun, right? Really, really fun to see. Like this one, I love seeing that die come back, Zoe. You know I love that die. That Cityscape, little hardware heads, little trim, and just Otisville. Fun to see, you know, the swirling stars just come back, and it makes him super magical. Like I want to do a whole little Peter Pan Neverland kind of thing now with that. Yep, that's the inspiration. It's a takeaway. Yeah, and the rooftop, the shingles, I mean, come on. Just the looks. Wow. All right, very good. Okay, moving on. Yeah, all right, set those there. I hope you guys see the inspiration, because that is what it's all about, is being inspired by the dies. Again, a little creep, a little fun, a little magic, a little whimsy, and a whole lot of creativity. That's what it's all about. Let me shut those down. There we go. All right, let's take this last pile. We're in the home stretch, guys, of this. Probably do a little quick demo at the end too, because I wanted to really talk about this folder in detail. So just get through the makes, and if there's time, then I'll do a demo on this, because this folder you can see just from the makes, and I'll bring the cards in, you know, one by one, okay, because they're all made by different makers. So this one is Kuber's make, okay, using that Skull 3D folder on a card. I just want to show that, like, when you're working with this, yeah, there we go, trying to get the camera to pick up that little bit of sheen. There's a lot of different kinds of products you can use on folders, right? So you can use everything from mica stains, alcohol alloys, alcohol mixatives, archival inks, paints. There's so many things. So there's no right or wrong way to alter the folders. And you're going to see different substrates, different things, right? But you can really take a background, especially something really strong like the skulls, and make a card by just adding, again, here's bold text, but take a look at the crackle, right? So that detail. So here you can take your die cuts, and by doing the distressed crackle paste over the top, to me they look like cracked enameled letters because they're thick. So it's stacked layers of them. But having that top layer, right? So whether using that paste or whether using rock candy, I'm not sure which one this is. This could be either one. But adding that little bit of brown, these look like, you know, cracked porcelain or cracked enameled letters. That adds a whole little Halloween vibe to it, right? And then the clipping stickers, so fun. Paula chooses all the little clippings for ideology. So this one, Deep in the Secret Chambers of My Heart, just like wickedly cool, right? But then you could just change up the colors, right? So Barbara created this, just taking black and then again going over this, whether you're using metallic, maybe it's a little foundry wax, right? You can see that wonderful shine on there. Adding that luminous color of purple, there's a little recessed, right, where you cut it out and then you ink the letters of a different color, push them back in, and then there's confections. Oh, that's what I was saying about splitting that, right? So Barbara split the mint, but then splitting those little sticks just to put on a card, and then all these little strings, whether using thread or mummy cloth, just cool. But it's amazing how it transforms the look just by changing the color, right? And then Keisha created this one. I love the candy corn vibe on this of the color, right? The orange, the yellow, and just look at that. Look at those gold teeth. Those are fantastic. See that? That little bit of foundry wax on there? And you guys, it's so good. Yeah. See? Feeling wicked good. It's just great. It's just a great play on words. Totally different from, right, same words, just how they're used completely changes it up. I love that. Yeah, I can't get over his gold teeth. Very cool. Also kind of piratey, right? Could be that. So the folder it's ridiculous. I agree. It's ridiculous. I agree, Tifa. I love them. They're just, it's like, it's one thing after the next. So Emma created this vignette box. Okay, but before I open it, let's just talk about the outside. So here we've got that skull folder. It's almost like a catacomb or like a crypt. I don't know. It has a great gothic vibe to me on this folder. But I love all the metallics on here. It just gives it such a wonderful finish when the light hits it, right? So whether you're using foundry wax or alloys or paints, go in and layer. Take the time to really burnish. And hopefully I'll share some tricks of how you can achieve some easy effects. And we'll get in way more techniques as the season goes on. Trust me on that. Here you can see that I love these word plaques from Ideology because it has those raised words. So there's found objects. I'm happy these came back again this year. We launched them last year. We brought them back this year. Little hardware heads, but take a look at the outside box. So this is an Ideology vignette box, which normally is this wood finish. But I love how Emma went in and just took it up a notch and used that wood grain colorized. So just like how Jan did, had that foundation, right? Take a look at how you can incorporate this piece on the box. Right? Layering this up, really creating that thick, really chunky wood looking box by adding that to the outside. Okay? So it totally changes from how this looks to how this piece is on there. Right? Then we open it up. There it is. There he is. There's Spencer. So good. So here on the inside you can see Feeling Wicked with all the bats. And then you can see those candles. That's what I was talking about from Candlelight. I love how she took those dies, added them to the cork vials, added a little hot glue, a little drippy wax everywhere, right? So you could use drippy candles from Ideology if you have those, but if you have this die, again, it just kind of keeps that same aesthetic of paper. But I love how she colored Spencer, just gave him all of those great layers, a little touch of sheen, right? A little bit of metallic on there, but all of the details of the leaves, the little books, right? Because he's sitting on a bookshelf, that skull. The little bottles with the chain coming out, right? Also very cool. You see the moss coming out of that. Just, yeah, it's all about the details. A little bit of mummy cloth around there. There's that tape, right? The Ideology tape. We designed that really skinny tape that we launched this year specifically to cover up the edges of the vignette box, and it does it so perfectly because it's the perfect fit to cover up those edges. But yeah, just very cool to see how he works. And this is what I was saying about scale. It was designed that it would work really, really well together. Then, of course, in a card, Juliana created this card, right? There you can see Candlelight again, but used in a totally different way. So here's Candlelight with the lantern, because it comes with that lantern and the candle. Here you can see Spencer right here. I love that pumpkin duo. I love just having the color layered over stamped, right? So this is one of the Halloween blueprints, I think, in the background. Right, some of that. I love some of that text there as well. And you can see here something dreadfully wicked. Again, that goes back to the tiny text Halloween. So pairing die cuts with stamps, really, really important. And I just like having all those pieces come together on a card, right? And I like how people are definitely using wicked for for working with for Spencer and the skull. And then we've got this. Now this one, like, it just made me smile because it's like, okay, this is Vicky, right? So Vicky created this, which she did with was Spencer. Okay, so the background you're going to recognize as the 3D lumber. So this is the mini lumber where we did the whole planks, and you could just run it through twice. But this is the eyeball from Trick or Treat, and how she put it in the socket of Spencer, right? Little shine on there, but how perfect is that?
That is awesome.
That is so good, so stinking good, and how she just has that shine on his eyeball. It is absolutely perfect. So that socket, just to think about shoving that eye in there, again, I'd like to say I did that. No, that was luck. But see, this idea is brilliant, because now it's just I want to stick that eye into Spencer now, just because it's fabulous, isn't it? So good. So again, a very clever idea. I mean, Vicky, just to think, oh, I'm gonna take that eyeball and I'm gonna put that in there. Yeah, of course you would, because that's what you're gonna do. Again, you see hardware heads give it a very cool industrial yet whimsical look to Halloween. It is brilliant. It's all about, like, yeah. And I even think, really, like, that's the kind of make where if someone's like, I don't care about the apple, I care about I want the eye. Okay, there you go. The eye's gonna have it for that. I can't get over the shine too, right? So it changes the whole look of that. And I've said all along that it is all about, like, a storyline, right? So whether you're going to create something, right, like a little library or a gallery, or whether you just want to create just a fun Halloween card, or you just want to be just fun and silly and spooky at the same time, and then you can just have an entire story in your head. And this make, I had to save this one at the end. It was the biggest one, but the story that went into this make is like, First, I can't imagine the time that any of these makers spend on their makes, because the ideas are overwhelming. But Stacy created this. This is like taking two like tombstone tops, you can see, putting them together on the base, that tag. But she created this entire thing of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, right? So you can see here that she's got Poe, right? The Raven. Down here, Nevermore, you guys see that? Again, etc. She's got the etc. there, right? She's got the date there. There's more of that etc. trims, covered in crypt paste, covered in little bits of kind of Excelsior, little ideology spider. The background is the Acorn folder, so it just creates such an eerie gothic look. But then we focus here. And this is the part that I was like, I had to actually like do a double take. So I'm like, wait a minute, that's the bird from this year. But because it was launched in spring, this is bird and egg. So to me, I saw this as a robin, I saw it as a blue jay, I saw it as a springtime bird. I never saw it as a raven, and now I do, right? So the fact that she just took that die and created this raven out of that and added that little bit of sparkle to it, put it with Spencer, right? So we've got that great skull, and take a look. There are the feathers. So there's Feathery, but these are like layered together and then stitched down the middle. So when I was talking about how you can add dimension to that, so these feathers that give that whole realistic look, it's just about stacking your die cuts, sewing it down the center of the feather, and then just start ruffling and curling these up. And then of course there's our stick, as well it should be, right, Stacy? We've got that. But just the amount of detail and storyline that goes into the makes are just, to me, absolutely fascinating. It is. It's fascinating that, you know, anyone could just take a design, take something that we did and put it in all of those things. And I think, you know, if Lisa's watching this and sees it, it's so important to truly appreciate that the time we spend to try to make every little detail not only work well together, but give a cohesive approach. But then see these happy, I'll call it a happy accident, because, you know, we didn't design the skull to scale with the bird. You know, I designed it for several things like the candle and all that, but I didn't design it for the eyeball, or I didn't design it for this. But seeing these pieces kind of come together to say, oh wow, that's the bird that we did, or oh, that eyeball works for this. That to me is the brilliant part of our creative community, and how people can come up with their ideas and their willingness to share it more than anything. I always say to the makers, and to anyone that posts, I'm always grateful to people that have a willingness to share. I think there are people out there, and I'm not here to, you know, to throw shame on anyone, but there are people out there that just don't want to share. They feel that, you know, it's their kind of proprietary artistic right. And I feel that as makers, we've been inspired by something somewhere, right? It's just your interpretation of how you put it together, and that's why we're here, to share all these ideas, right? so incredibly cool. So let's just do a quick little demo. Amazing job, makers, amazing. But I wanted to talk about that skull folder and just kind of play around. So thanks, Mario.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Let me clean off a little bit of sparkles here. There we go. That's all right. Okay. There we are. We got this in there. Good. Square that up. Okay. I just want to talk about this. There we go. Bring this in. Because I went through it quickly at the intro, and I talked about how I would just talk a little bit more about this folder. And just know that although I'm going to show you this folder, these ideas can work on any pattern that you have for an embossing folder. Okay, so if you're like, I don't want the skull, I'm out of here. You still might be interested in an idea that will come up. Okay. Hey, would you mind, Mario, grabbing me just a piece of watercolor paper? It's in that cutter. It's like third up. Nope, down. There you go. Thanks. Because I might try that one. I don't know. I didn't plan on it, but now that I've got this out, I might end up doing that as well. Okay. So there's many substrates that you can use. It's not about just only using the ones I'm sharing. Play around with what you have, okay? But the papers that I like to work with, I've said it all along in pretty much every video I've ever done, surfaces matter, okay? It's not a selling ploy. It's really about a way for you to get the most out of the tools that are designed, because they are designed with a certain specification. Obviously, I know that these 3D folders are incredibly deep, incredibly detailed, and if you have thin paper, quite honestly, they destroy it. They chew right through it. But I'm not designing it for thin paper. I'm designing it for the paper that I want to work with. And so sometimes that means you need to, add an additional layer to take off the pressure, or work with thicker paper, right? From 114 pound cardstock to 100 pound cardstock to even 130 pound, okay? Now the effects that you can achieve are quite unique, okay, when you're working with a folder. So most of these, they're already done, but I'm just going to go in and I'll do this archival one just so you kind of understand what I was saying as far as cleaning. Because you're always going to get something a little bit different each time. Okay, that's the important thing to remember. And this is just taking archival ink and using it on cardstock. Now this could be watercolor cardstock. This one happens to be white heavy stock, but it doesn't really matter. Right? I just want you to know that if you want a thicker paper to do this, because we're going to do a couple of runs or a couple of passes through this. Okay, when you open a folder, you're always going to have what's referred to as like the flat side, okay, that has more flat elements to it. So even on something textured like this, there is still a flat trail, if you will, that we want to cover. This is going to be the part that's actually pushed in to the paper. That's where we get black inside. We're essentially like putting ink and we're going to stamp that into it. Okay, if you put ink on this side, it's only going to come up from the back. Now it might give you a reverse look, but it is important that you're inking more on the smooth side. Okay, now the ink that I want to work with, let me grab that. Oh, where'd my little demo thing go? I think it's over here.
What do you need?
No, I got it. I just put it out of reach, but I don't know how far out of reach I put it.
What are you looking for?
My black archival pad. Oh, it's over there. That's why. Mario is so efficient. It's awesome. I set something down. He's like, let me clean this up for you. Thanks.
Alexa.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to work with archival ink. The reason I want to work with archival on this particular one is just because I like the effect or finish, but you can play around with oxide or other things that you want to work with. Okay, completely up to you. But I chose archival because I wanted something a little permanent. The other thing, the reason I like archival is, let's say I wanted to then go in and do spray stain or oxide spray or mica stain. By doing this first deboss layer with something waterproof, I don't have to worry about my black smearing, right? If you did this for, like, say, black archival, black oxide, and you put this in, then anytime you got that wet, you would risk this kind of re-wetting and moving around, okay? So it is important that your ultimate end goal is how you need to start, okay? So here we're going to take archival, and I'm just going to go direct. Now you could use a brayer, but we want to have a pretty good amount of ink on here, okay? So I'll just show you a little bit, and then I'm going to get set up and I'll finish. But just to give you the look. So this is what's happening, right? Now when I take my ink pad, I'm kind of working in different directions. I'm not just sitting here swiping one way, and I'm not stamping it, okay? Because if you stamp it, if you press down on your ink pad, this is very squishy, and you could risk putting ink in areas that you may not want it. Not to say you can't do that, but just my thing is always just kind of rubbing this around and smoothing this in areas, okay? So let me take this out. It's going to be a little weird for a minute because I've got to take out a machine. So I'm going to put my, a little dusty, there we go. I've got my switch machine here just so, because I want you guys to see it. So I'm just going to turn it on, open this up. I'll have this kind of offset on the camera just so you know. So when it comes to working, if you have the Switch Plus, you could of course work with the large platform that it comes with. But if you have any other Sizzix machines, the Vagabond, the Foldaway, the Big Shot, you can use that platform that came with that machine. It's exactly the same one. So you can get a smaller pass. Totally up to you, but you can. And that's why I like to work, on this. It's something small. So I'm just going to use those, right? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this. I need to do a fresh layer of ink. So I'm just rubbing this around in areas, going back and forth. Archival, the reason I like Archival also, it is oil-based. So it's going to give it, someone asked if I can back the camera. I can't. If I could, I would. I can't, so I'm not. Taking this, folding this down, okay? Then I'm just going to place one cutting pad over the top, because that's all we need to do. It's going to go in, and I have it at an angle. I always have that at an angle. So I'm going to put that in. It's going to go through. I'm going to wait till it just hits the end of this, and then I'm going to switch. So I just touch the switch once. It's a little grinding. I like to work my machines. But you could use really whatever machine you want. It's just, especially on a 3D, to me it's much, much easier. Okay, and this is what we have. Very cool, right? We've got that ink. You can see how the archival has been debossed, right? That black is pushed in there. And I still have some ink remnants on here because archival is permanent, okay? So I did not spray my paper on this one first. You could, but I didn't for this one because I found that on watercolor paper for this one, I didn't need to because it's already going to give me those little dips. But on other cardstock, like if I do heavy stock or craft, I always spray those. Watercolor paper has a little bit more flexibility. So for me, I don't use it, but you could. It won't interfere because this is waterproof. So it won't matter if you spray it. Okay. So notice I've kept my paper in the folder. I haven't taken it out, okay? Because what I want to do is I want to get this wash technique next. So I'm going to go in with archival cleaner. Why am I using archival cleaner? Because archival cleaner is what you use to clean archival, okay? Archival is waterproof, so spraying water on this ink is not going to clean it off, right? Now, could you use alcohol? I tried rubbing this with alcohol, but the alcohol dried so quick that it didn't give me the effect. I'm not saying it won't work. Maybe you want to try hand sanitizer or whatever it is you're going to do. But this one, although it's not my favorite for cleaning stamps, it's great for cleaning archival, right? If you've ever seen me use it, I normally put it on my stamp, clean it, and then clean my stamp with water. But because this is kind of oily, it's going to work great for how I want to use it, okay? So I'm just going to take the cleaner and I'm going to clean the embossing folder, right? So it has that little kind of fabric top, and I'm not worried about getting it into the recessed areas either, right? So I'm not just gonna, I'm not soaking it down, but I just want to make sure that I'm wiping that on there, right? As if I'm cleaning it. And then I'm just going to place it back down, making sure that's lined up, and we're gonna run it through again. So I go back to my platform, my cutting pad. Now, because I've already run it through twice, I'm just going to make my one pass because I've already done my embossing. So I don't want to go 4 times. So I'm just going to let this go all the way through. I'm not going to switch it. Just got stuff on the other side. It's like coin dozer. All right. And that's what we get. How freaking cool is that? How easy right? Is that? So this is kind of like my cheat way of dry brushing. But what it also does is it just kind of like, I don't know, the cleaner gives me all sorts of different tonal values, if you will, right? It's not just like putting one color of dry brushing over it. It's giving me black where there was more ink. It's giving me less where there's more cleaner. The entire thing now has like the perfect shading. Do you see? Like so different. Here, let me clear this out.
Oh, you finally found a good use for our
Well,
archival cleaner.
well, I mean, I use it to clean archival, but normally I'd clean with archival and I would spray it off. This technique was literally discovered from laziness.
That's like
Because normally when I'm cleaning a folder, I would use my archival cleaner, wipe it with a paper towel, spray it with water, clean it off. But this time I had a piece of paper there and I'm like, let me just run it through again. And then I was, see, it's the what ifs. Yeah, it's wow, right?
wow.
So there you go from just being single. So I'll show you kind of all three versions, right? So there's white cardstock if you were done. This is if you just inked the folder, ran it through, and you were done. And this is inking the folder, running it through, leaving it in there, archival cleaner, running it through again. So you can clearly see the difference between just the ink and that little bit of schmutz on the top. It's very cool to me because it doesn't schmutz everything, right? That's what I really liked about like what the archival cleaner did. And of course I had to play, right? Because you know, I like when I got new colors of archival, it's like I really wanted to try this with frayed burlap, right? Or you can do with walnut stain, any kind of archival, because the archival is what's going to give me, I think, more definition as well, because I could still go in and ink this. Because it's all done with archival, if you wanted another color, I could go in with a blending tool or a brush and add another color, and I don't have to worry about this black re-wetting because I'm using archival ink, which is waterproof. So whether you're using the archival in the large pad or whether you're using the minis, archival is waterproof. Even if it's distress archival, distress is just the color palette. Black soot that's my jam right there. But cool. So I wanted to share that with you because sometimes talking about it, you're like, so you did what? You put this and you did the cleaner and I don't understand. Seeing it, hopefully you get it. That you run it through, you leave it in there as if you were done, clean your folder and do another pass. Now, you're still going to have leftover ink in there a little bit. This is where there wasn't any paper, by the way. So you would still want to go in after you took it out and just wipe this down, baby wipe or something, to get any last bit of ink off there. But for the most part, you know, 90% of it came off on that paper as it absorbed. So that is one really cool trick to use archival and cleaner to create something, like, to me, very cool with the skull folder. And that's why we needed to have the machine to kind of show you that, because you need to do it in real time to see it. The other ones, we're really going to talk about paper, okay? So this is what I was saying about alcohol ink cardstock, okay? So this is 125 pound weight cardstock. I use it for cards, I use it for die cuts, because the beauty of this paper, its thickness, but it's also like a suede finish. I don't even know how to describe it. It just has like a really interesting kind of suede-y, I mean, it isn't a suede paper, but it just has that kind of great finish. It's perfect when you're doing just backgrounds like this. It just creates a wonderful effect. If you want to create an accent, this is where I was talking about using picket fence distress ink. You could try it with anything you have. Again, you could use pigment ink, you can use a blending brush, you can use a brayer, you can use paint, you can do any of those things that you want, okay? I just like this because it is a felt pad, so just like distress ink or oxide, and you could do this technique with oxide. If you didn't want white and you wanted a color, maybe antique linen or salvage patina, you could do the same thing. But essentially picket fence it's not really an ink or an oxide, right? Because it's just a pigment. So this came out before oxide, so there's not like an oxide version of picket fence because it's the same thing. It's just white, all right? But what's nice about it is, I'll show you, I can take this ink pad and I can just go directly over the top at first. It depends on like how you want to see this look. Okay, so there's my high points, but this is an ink, mind you. This is distress. Distress is designed to blend. So I could use a blending tool, I can use a blending brush, or I can just take a paper towel and I can wipe this to get a little bit of that blend, because the ink is not going to dry right away, and that's going to start putting some white. So I even like kind of that little ghostly look. Of course, if you used a blending tool, you would be able to get more in there, so just keep that in mind. If you use a blending tool, because it's squishy, you're going to push more of that color into those areas. So you might end up whiting out too much, but it's completely up to you. Play around with some different tricks. Then I'm going to do another layer, right? Kind of hit that point. Then I might just go in and just push some of that color in on certain areas, right? So not necessarily the whole thing. So I now have like highlights and lowlights, right? Again with a paper towel. And then I might just hit it one more time just from little skippity bits, so not the whole thing, and then I would let it dry. That's it. Let it dry completely, and this is what you get. Just a really cool, simple way to work with white ink, right? Because again, pigment pads are going to be squishy, kind of foamy, and so sometimes when you use a pigment pad, you just get it in too many areas. And so by sticking with Distress, having that kind of dense compressed felt, it just allows me to hit the high points. Simple, right? Very, very simple. So, and try this with other colors of cardstock. This could be on craft. This could be, so this isn't working because, you know, it's black alcohol ink cardstock. I just like this kind of paper, but you could try this on any other colored cardstock you have that is going to give a nice contrast to your picket fence Distress ink.
That reminds me of an X-ray.
Yeah, it does. It has a very cool kind of X-ray vibe. Yep, I like the effects. And that's really why I wanted just to do these kind of quick demos, just to show you, because sometimes you see a technique and you're like, oh, complicated. And then you see how it's done and you're like, duh, that was easy. Yes, that was easy, okay? Just like metallic, right? Because normally I think if you were doing metallic, you might sit there and go, okay, well, hold on. I think I'm going to do the archival technique. And you could take the archival ink and you could try to press it down in there, but you're not going to get the opacity on metallic paper like you do on something truly porous like watercolor paper, right? The archival is going to want to sit on here. It may not give you a really deep contrast. So to me, the solution for metallic is using paint, okay? And all of these are metallic, right? The silver, even the black, is also metallic, okay? So let's talk about the metallics. This is what I was saying at the very beginning. This is the new craft stock that we did this year. Now, that's not to say this won't work with the pads. If you have the 8x8 pads of metallic craft stock, if you have that, use it up. It's just going to be a little thinner than what I'm working on, but the finish is exactly the same, okay? The only thing we did different is we changed the size, because I really wanted something, instead of 8x8, I did 6x9, because I can put this right through my machine if I was die cutting. Also, even though the folders are like, 4¼ by 6¼ I just use the 6 and I can get 2 backgrounds now out of my metallic paper without all of the waste. So I wanted to do it like that as well. There are 2 packs now. Before we had all these different metallic packs. When we relaunched them, it's now a 100-pound cover, so it's much thicker. This is all like your metallic classics, right? Your silver gold, rose gold, copper, bronze. There's even this black onyx that I love, right? That's what this one is, right? I don't know if I still have a sheet. There we go. That's the black onyx. Isn't that cool? Black metallic. And then we have just the colors. And the colors are all of them. We used to have different pads of like confections and jewels. Now it's just a whole little spectrum palette, right? Of pinks and orange and different shades of greens and blues and purples. And these are really fun because, again, that's one sheet. Very, very thick. That's what I love about this cardstock, because when you emboss it, it literally feels like metal. It has that thickness to it. So that was the reason why I wanted to even change the thickness and relaunch this paper. I don't normally do that, but doing more and more embossing, I'm like, I want something that's just going to hold up to serious pressure to it. So, for example, these, exactly the same. Okay, this is silver, and this is silver with paint. These two, exactly the same. Green, green with paint. And so I want to show you that as a maker, you can decide like what level you want to bring these to, right? I do love the purple one though. I love this orange one. The only difference between what I'm going to share here, which is using black paint, okay, for all of these was black paint, and this one, because it was black metallic, I just used white paint. So if you like more of this kind of, I don't know, almost chalky look, you could essentially use white paint on any of these to get this effect. The only difference is paint color. Black for these, black to me, you're going to get more metallic shine. White, because it has that really intense white pigment, it's going to dull it down a little bit, which could be okay. Maybe that's what you want to do. But I like this because it doesn't involve any sanding, any nothing. It's literally put it on, take it off. Simple. So here we go. I'll do the green one because I really want to do the green one, but it's all going to work the same, just so you get it, okay? So what I like about black distress paint, and some people actually hate this about black distress paint, is it's very fluid, right? When you shake it up, it is the most fluid of all the distress paints. It's almost like a watery black, but it's perfect viscosity for this technique, for using it over metal, for using it with a splatter brush. So, I like it, all right? So if you want like a thicker black paint, there's black acrylic paint. I'm going to use a blending foam. I've got a domed foam on here. The other thing about this paint, it doesn't have any fillers. So this foam, this is my dedicated paint foam. It will never harden. It's always going to stay soft because the paint will never harden like regular acrylic paints do as well. So I'm just going to shake it. I'm just going to take this. I'm going to drip this on. I might end up doing the silver because it's here and I've got paint in my hand, so why not? I'm just going to drip some paint on there. Okay, I could go back with more if I want. Take that, and I'm just going to start painting this entire sheet of paper. I'm going to go over here so I can clean it off easier, but you can see here that I'm just kind of pouncing. Let me move this off to the side a little bit. That can stay right there. There we go. I'm just going to pounce and kind of move this around because I want to get paint into the areas. That's why a domed foam is really nice. If you don't have a domed foam and you have regular foam, that's fine. But I'm pouncing, twisting, swiping. The goal is to paint the paper. The goal is not to take it off, okay? Because some people are like, oh, I need to dry brush. No, that's the thing. If you're challenged with the whole dry brush because maybe you're going with a heavy hand, you don't have to worry about it with this technique, okay? So that's why it is nice to do the reverse with a white acrylic paint. So I'm pouncing this down, pounce, pounce, pounce. That's enough paint, see? Because having a blending tool, it kind of keeps the paint in there as well. All right, so now it's the time game. I wish I could tell you, leave it on for a minute, take it off. I can't because it depends on your weather. It depends on humidity. It depends on, is it hot in the room? Is it cold in the room? Do you have a ceiling fan on? Do you have a fan blowing on it? All of those things are going to impact drying time. So all I can say to you as the maker is that just kind of don't leave the room, okay? Because distress paint is permanent when it dries. So if you just leave this on here, it's going to be permanent painted paper and it's done. So normally when I'm done painting, I'm just going to start wiping this off right away. Now I'm not scrubbing it, I just have a dry paper towel and I'm just kind of going over the top of this just to take off the initial layer of paint. And I'll show you this in stages if I can. So same thing on silver, and I like to go in different directions because I want this to kind of look scratchy. And that's why I also don't use a cloth because a cloth is too soft. I want to use something that's just a bit more rigid to remove it, okay? And the beauty of this, you can see already, you can stop at any point. Like if you like this and you're like, that's just what I want, you're done. Step away, right? But you can keep going. So here you can see that there's a lot of paint, see in those little sockets? So I'm just gonna go in with the paper towel and I'm gonna dab just to kind of knock some of that down. And I don't want to take it out, but I just want to knock some of that down. And this is what I have so far, okay? I've got that paint and I have this paint, okay? So what I'll do is take another paper towel and I'm going to spray it with a little bit of water. So I'm spraying the paper towel with water. A baby wipe is too wet for this, so you want it just a little damp. And then I'm just going to start lightly swiping over this. And look at the difference. Can you guys see the difference, right? By taking a damp paper towel, you're then removing that black residue over the raised part, and that's what's giving me that serious shine. If you don't want it, you can leave it. But if you want to have that color really shine through, you need a little bit of a damp paper towel, and you just lightly drag, again, change your directions over this, and that is what's going to bring up that beautiful metallic color. So same thing on silver, right? You need to have a clean part of your paper towel. If you keep using this part, you're essentially painting it with watered down paint, okay? So a little bit of water on that, and I'm just gonna just lightly swipe. So you can see, look at that on the silver. See the difference between that side and that side? It's a little bit more subtle on the silver, but you can see that it cleans off real nice. Now, if you didn't like it, or let's say you got too heavy-handed, at this point, you could take that domed foam and you could dab paint over the whole thing again. You could do it again, really. Distress paint just has a little bit different drying time on this paper. It also allows me to kind of go in, manipulate a little bit of this with a little bit of that damp paper towel, right? And once you're happy with it, you're done, right? So like I like having a little bit of that paint right there. And then I'll just take that paper towel and just use it just to clean off the craft mat. See what I mean about if you just use the same area, you're essentially painting with watered down paint. So I'm just going to take a clean part of my paper towel and clean this off. Couldn't be easier, right? So that is the beauty of working with paint on those metallics. Just unbelievable to see just how cool that effect is over the background. I love it. It's so easy to do. And I mean, drying time, I would say inside here, it could be like a little wet, but you could take a heat tool and dry it at this point. But I don't ever like to force this with a heat tool because it doesn't allow that kind of play time with it, right? Very, very gunmetal, very kind of, poison apple look on that, but super cool to see just how you can change it up. And because of all the different colors, right? Like copper or bronze man, so good. So good. So this one, I'll show you the difference, right? So this one this one I just demoed. You can see that I took a lot of that off so it's silver. See how this one I left a little bit more paint over there? You can see that little bit of paint on there. So it kind of looks a little bit more gunmetal. So even with the same paper, you can determine how bright you want by how much you take off. Or you can put more on right now. Man, sky's the limit. But that's what I wanted to share with you. So that was a whole overview of Sizzix Halloween for 2022.